Hey guys, Jeff here, and in today's video I'm going to show you how you can absolutely transform your space for about $3,000 in 8 weekends. Now the truth is if you were to hire a contractor, it'd probably be about $15,000. So if you want to have a fabulous kitchen and you want to do it on a budget, watch this video and learn how I did mine. And you can do this too. Cheers. So there's really nothing left to do but to start tearing this thing apart. And because everything here is basically made of particle board, it's not going to be that tricky. So watch this. Right? All it takes is a little bit of muscle and remove the trims. Because it's the only thing keeping this thing attached. Oh, here we go. And go to the other side here, I think. Whew! That's actually installed better than I thought it was going to be. All these trims put up a pretty good fight. Let's see if that helps. Yep. Amazing the power of a brad nail, eh? Oh, come on, honey. There seems to be... Wow. Okay, so that's unique. The way this was installed from the factory is they built the wall frame, put the counter on top of this, screwed it through the wall plate, and then they closed it up. So I just need a little bit more muscle here to break those screws loose. Okay. Wow. And that's it. Not sure what the best way to go here is. Whoops. There we go. Whew, straight to the bin. I thought I found money, but nope. That's just play money. Now, let's see how this was built. I think we're really smart. Instead of just smashing away around here, we're going to open up the wall and see if we can expose the screws holding this wall down. Because sure enough, yep, 1x3 plate with screws. You don't have to work so hard if you work smart, eh? Let's throw that one out. Very creative. All right. Oh. All right. There we go. Let's see. Yeah. I think in this case, just because of the weight of this, if I take it off as one box, it's probably going to be more dangerous than if I just rip it out one piece at a time. So, wow, that is ugly. Wow, that is ugly. Wasn't sure what I was going to do with all this, but now I know. It's just ugly. Now this is structural, which is a real pain, so it's got to stay. But it doesn't have to stay ugly. Oh my goodness. Wow. That's nice. That's a joint right there. I can work with that. We don't have to reframe anything. I mean, in a perfect world, it'd be nice if this was flush with the cabinets maybe, but it doesn't have to be perfect, just perfect for us. Oh, bloody staples. Yeah, all right. Let's take a look at what's in behind here. This is this 1/4-inch drywall again. All right. Again, before I go crazy, I want to see how it's installed so I can uninstall it. Looks like it's the same concept. It's framed, it's screwed, and then it's capped. Now, and there's all my screws. All the way up through the top, too. Wow, they really attached it to the top. There's 9 screws holding up a fake wall. There's 2 screws in the cabinet holding, 4 in the cabinet holding it to the wall, but there's 9 on the top plate. Wow, that's overkill. Holy cow. You know what? I'm changing my bit out. Going to a longer one so I don't have to stand on my tippy toes to do this. That's just ridiculous. A grown-ass man. Like I'm trying to climb into the covers of steel cookies. Holy cow. Well, that didn't really grab much, did it? There we go. So each one of these screws carries 80 pounds. That's about 1,000 pounds across the top. Holding up something made out of 1x3s. Imagine that. Paranoia. Alrighty. Wow, does that ever open the place up? I am loving this. I can just see it. Eden bar. Okay. All right, I'm gonna just throw the rest of this crap out, clean up so I don't step on a nail, and then we'll start on the kitchen countertops. Okay. So the plan is to replace the new doors with new modern hinges, okay? And they actually make the exact same profile hinge in modern metal colors. So, knowing that makes this really simple. This kind of picture frame cabinet, all right, it's really easy to screw to the surface. And when I go to refinish this, as long as I leave those holes where they are, I know exactly where the hinges go. Makes my life simple, right? Well, I've never really paid much attention to this before. Okay, so they obviously had a leak, had rot, they've lost their bottom shelf, they reframed. This is not built properly. Oh, Lord. Whew. I guess that means that I'm gonna have to rebuild the bottom of this cabinet. I can't leave it like that. My day just got better. All right. Let's just get all these off. The first thing I want to do is get access to all this plumbing. Turn off the water supply. Disconnect these hoses and see if there's anything leaking, because these are the old multiple twists that means there's 2 gaskets, one to seal it in the on and in the off position. Most of the times they haven't been touched for years. And so when you go to close them, those gaskets are all dried out and they don't actually work. And so they're still leaking water the whole time. It's good to have a system. All right, let's see what we got here. Get all this crap out of here. Okay, at least it's clean. Keep this handy. All right, so here's the hot. Tees off to the dishwasher. So first we'll close that one. Okay, and then to the sink. Ooh, that was a lovely gasket sound. Here's the cold, and it splits to the fridge as well. Yeah, let's start with that. See that? I've already got water coming out of this handle. Doesn't like being closed. Let's see if it's leaking or not. Now I'm going to get some water in here. There's no way I'm not going to get some water in here. I can come out from here maybe. Let's see what happens. I'm just fighting with the water to get it to spill out a little bit. And yep, it's staying down there. That's good news. Now, all of these lines come with washers and the gaskets. All right. And so, generally speaking, a couple of quarter turns, and you should be able to undo it with your fingertips. As soon as I say that, I can't do it, right? Alrighty. Here, try that one. Well, that was the easy part. We're going to want to disengage our sink from our drain plumbing and leave all this plumbing engaged. All right, so most particle board countertops all have the same concept in mind, but different applications. In this case, there's a framing, and the screw holding the countertop down is under here going straight up. Okay, sometimes there's blocking or strapping. Look for the screws. The point is there's usually, every 8 feet of counter, there's usually about 4 screws. Once you've disengaged those, the counter just pops right off. Oh yeah, baby, that's the one. Those screws are all stripped. I think they stripped them when they put them in. Not uncommon. So if your screws are stripped, here's what you do. It's just for mica. So punch it into smaller pieces that you can manipulate. Okay? All right, guys. Here we go. We're gonna just go at it from here. Yeah, there we go. We're just gonna pry this off the screws. There we go. Felt that disengaged? There we go. Here we go. There we go. That's easy. That'll make it easier for the sink because it'll be a separate piece. But this countertop seems to be all one piece. It's a C-shape, 8 foot by 4 foot, cut into one piece of particle board. So I got to break down through here so I can manipulate just the sink. Make sure that we're disengaging. There we go. Okay, or we can do it that way, I guess. All right, that's going straight to the garbage. Now, just a note, those water supply lines you saw in the sink, resist the temptation to try to save them and use them again. They're not built to be attached and disengaged and then reattached again. All right, and they will fail. This framing they have across the front, they didn't run it down the side. So that's just a sharp piece of melamine sitting there. It may not feel like it, but for mica, these little edge cuts, these are all trimmed and then lightly sanded. The material itself is pretty sharp. So if you're dealing with an exposed edge like this, you run the risk, especially if your hands get damp, run the risk of cutting yourself up pretty bad. All right. So this is Formica. It's waterproof, it's glued down contact cement, okay? These cut edges here are almost like razors. Dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. And that's how kitchen counters are made. No wonder everybody wants to go to natural stone, eh? Okay. There's that screw. Right there, bugger. Well, if it won't come up, it'll go down. That'll pull it off the screw just as easily. Here's the other one. They have one in the back corner too. Oh, two of them back there. Oh, that was necessary. Okay. That's a real pain in the butt. Now, what I have to do now is actually have to grab my grinder with my metal blade and trim these screw heads off, okay? Because the screws are all stripped, I'm not gonna worry about trying to fuss around. I'm just gonna give them all a quick grind so I'm set up for success. Then I can clean up. Okay, one more thing. The face of every one of these cabinets, these old drawers, they have a trick to them. They are screwed together with the handles, but they're assembled with staples. I've seen this a lot of times. So if you're going to change your door face, try to do it close to the up front here. Wedge something in there so you're prying the door off. Okay. Sooner or later, you'll either cut through the staples or they'll lose their integrity and they'll give up. There we go. Bam, right there. All right, that's a lot of staples. No adhesives, so you'll win. But you can't put a new drawer face on if you don't do that. Oh, look at me. And I damaged the door anyway. I'm gonna try to do this so I can avoid having to rebuild all these drawers. Nope. This old particle board is not gonna work well for us. Okay. Yeah. Oh well, you don't win every time. All right, here we go. We'll leave that alone for now. What a pain in the butt. All right. Before I finish my demolition here, I have to manage my job site. Now, what I mean by that is this. The next step here, once I've got all the surfaces off, of course, is to clean, degrease, sand, and all that kind of jazz. We're gonna be painting the cabinets. I gotta get the appliances out of here to do that. But before I do, I'm gonna get rid of this nasty piece of paper transition. Yeah, there we go. Love that. God. Okay, just don't want to have any bumps in the road here. Okay. Let's get these screws down before we forget. Oh. There we go. Nothing to it, eh? That's right, anybody can take apart their own kitchen, paint their cabinets, change their counters, put in new sinks. It's not that difficult. And on this channel, I'm going to show you every step of the way as we go. I am using a 220 grit, 5-inch random orbital. Has holes in it because you can sand and it sucks like a vacuum, filters out. Keeps the air somewhat clean. Nice and nice, 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 nice. Now, we have two issues here. One, this is the second paint job this cabinet's had. There's an original paint, I can scratch it off. Okay, see that? I don't know what they painted it with, but it sure as heck wasn't something that they sanded first and then put an enamel paint on. This is some other kind of like homeowner, maybe something that from Behr that they got at the Home Depot close by. It's not a kitchen cabinet paint, obviously, and they never prepped the surface right. So I've actually got to take the surface off before I can prep my kitchen. What a pain in the buttski. And then I just realized, wow, it would have been really nice if I wasn't using 220 grit. This would be a perfect time for a 50 grit sandpaper. I'm going to be all day pulling that off. My goodness. All right. Well, listen, let's move on to phase 2, which is the actual surface of these counters. This is a particle board shelf, and it's been used and abused over the years. Whenever you have particle board, you've got to maintain your paint, because if you start to see that brown showing through, like right here, and every time you put a wet glass from the dishwasher in your counter, you're in trouble. Here we go. The point is this, you want to make sure all your surfaces are sanded smooth and then clean, because you can't paint dust. It doesn't bond, right? Woo! That's not that bad. Not bad. All right. Okay. We're just going to take a damp rag here. Now, the difference between wet and damp is exactly that. A wet rag hasn't been wrung out, and a damp rag has been wrung out. Now, let's just do a clean hand and we'll check to see if there's any surface dust. Yeah, you can see it all. So vacuuming is kind of like not bad, but it's not a solution. So make sure that you take the time to wash everything here with a damp rag, get the dust out. And then we're going to spray the primer for the wood, because we've got a fair amount of exposed surface up here. All right, brilliant. Now that is the next step. Now we get our paint sprayer over here, and we're going to pull out the wood primer and give that a good spray. At the same time, I'm going to shoot my ceilings, because it's the same paint. We're using Prep-Rite Pro Block. This is a wood primer. It has a lot of applications, but it can go straight on wood paneling. So if you have a house built in the wood paneling era, this is the solution to your problem. Let's turn the machine on. There we go. Now we're fully loaded. It's the same paint that was in there before, so I'm not worried about it. Okay, now. Okay. The key here, of course, is to keep this kind of like 90 degrees. Okay. Yeah, you're supposed to be working. All right. So like I said, I want to spray the edge of my ceilings first, just because it needs to be done. Okay, and that's it. Boom. So I don't spray my camera guy. I think the lens is still good. We're just going to prime the inside of this cabinet, wherever we see the wood, okay? We don't have to do the whole cabinet. We just want to hit all that exposed wood. Give it something to soak up so that we can get another finish on there. All right, that's good. I don't have to prime the paint or the rest of the wood. It's already got a paint coat on there, so we're going to consider that primed already, okay? If the sanding disc isn't taking it off, then it's perfectly good to paint on. So this surface is already ready to go, all right? All I got to do is switch over to the 220 and do a little finer sand here to make the transition from one paint to the next a little smoother. Okay, and now we'll just give it another quick scuff, because when you run your hand over it, you can feel the texture, and you don't want to have texture when you're painting. Now it's time to switch paints. Not just the texture, but the color, all of it. This is going to be awesome. In order to do this, we have to leave the outfeed here, okay? Because we're going to prime the pump and then run through. I want to take my damp rag. I want to clean my intake, right? And this is a throwaway scenario. Let's wipe as much of that off of there as we can, and bye-bye. Whoop, didn't work out so well. And then we pump it into here, okay? I know, crazy. Okay, so what we're looking at, this is the discharge, and I'm filling this green paint and trying to replace it. Can't do it without getting all this out of the line. So let me just get that primer dried out of here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my primer on this back wall where I have all my lovely printed drywall, and I'm going to spray until I see the green start coming through, okay? Behave. Oh, there we go. We got cabinet color. Ah, very nice. Now, I'm gonna get another rag. Now that my paint's coming through, I want to just clean this up as much as I can as well. I don't mind getting a little bit of contamination in a paint line here, guys. Okay, done. All right. The point of this there we go, was to get to this point where we can see our new paint color, right? And there it is. I think it's called evergreen fog or mist or something. Evergreen fog. Not sure what an evergreen fog is. But there are thousands and thousands of paint colors in the big book. And so sooner or later, yeah, that primer's still not dry on there. Okay, we're gonna have to wait a few minutes. Yeah. All right, so I just washed my hands with the primer. The stuff we're using, it's got a built-in sticky component to it, so it bonds to surfaces. It doesn't wash off that well. You might want to consider wearing gloves. So, this paint job, instead of masking off all the doors, okay, because the other backside is kind of ugly, I'm going to paint the entire thing. This can get a little messy. So the secret is hit this top, and then the sides, and then the back. And then when I'm done, all of the back walls and the ceilings of the shelves, we'll come back, we'll do the bottom and then the face, because we want to give this primer a chance to dry. All right. There we go. Now, this is probably going to take 2 coats to do this well, but The secret, of course, is have it on the lowest pressure possible, so it's not blowing back in your face the whole time. All right? Wow, that's pretty sexy, if I do say so myself. All right. Whew. Now the secret here is this trim. We're gonna paint that with a brush later, okay? So, we'll see if we can paint this without a cut surface. Not bad. All right. You don't want to resist the temptation to do too many touch-ups in the same area at the same time. Always better to come back and spray 20 minutes, half an hour later, let everything dry first. Otherwise you're gonna get all these drips, big thick blobs and gobs. It's gonna look like heck. All right. Here we go, underneath. Okay. All right. Whew. There we go. Well, that's not so bad, eh? All righty. Now we'll hit inside these cabinets while we're at it. Okay. Now we have to just say, okay, I gotta let this dry. So the reason I stopped what I was doing and did this area is because I have to paint all of my kitchen cabinet doors. So the doors are in. There we are. What I want to do is I got to set up my spray station right there. Okay. Because perfect. We're going to be demonstrating today how to paint your cabinet doors. This is just a quick little system. You come over here. This is a slotted L-shaped piece of metal bracket. It's heavy gauge. It'll carry a lot of weight without bending under pressure, right? So bear with me and I'll show you the system. We just simply get on the ladder, throw a couple of screws into these holes, okay? And we don't even want them drilled all the way down. Just like that. So the rod can't slide off, all right? I know, it's that simple. And then I'll throw one over here too for the same thing in case there's an accident. I'm gonna use cup hooks right here, all right? Screw them into the bottom side of the doors that are on the bottom and the top of the doors that are going up top in the kitchen, and we'll paint them and then hang them here to dry. Boom. That's the entire system. All right, that's it. It's not that complicated. So these are the doors. We ordered these online from the cabinet door store, right? Fantastic. I have to make a second order because somehow I confused 3 of the door sizes. I'm going to take the blame for that one. These things happen. And in the meantime, we're going to get as many of these done as we can, get them off the floor. We're going to use this corner like a spray booth, right? I already have my window protected. I don't care how much primer blows around. I don't care how much cabinet paint blows around. Ultimately, we're going to finish that in the cabinet paint anyway. So we just got to think the end from the beginning on a project. Make sure that it's a lot easier to prime something in an area where there's primer flowing around, right? That just makes sense. All right, here's the system, guys. Hook and go. It's really that simple, right? This is a wood primer, and the machine's off. Oh, shit. Really only a couple of rules here. Rule number one, less is more. So you're gonna get a lot of overspray because you don't wanna be too close, right? This is a shaker door, so it's got a lot of detail. So you wanna kind of spray straight on, but a little bit down, and then a little bit up. So shoot from above and then from beneath, and you should get all of those grooves at the same time. And here we go. Now that it's on, it'll probably be easier to paint. There we are. And the other end. And from on top. Remember, it's 6 sides, so make sure you get a little paint everywhere. And then all you do is just grab your little hook and set it over here to dry. All right, grab another one. And do this 28 times. Oh yeah, did I mention? It's 3 coats of paint, 1 primer, 2 finish coats. So this takes time, which is why having the drying rack is real beneficial. And because you're spraying, the drying time is 20 to 30 minutes because wood absorbs the moisture, okay? Here we go. Let's get that going the right direction here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit these doors, you know, in small batches so that they're not drying stuck together, all right? And I'll just kind of come out and do a little bit. I'm gonna be working in another part of the house, and all day long I'll just keep coming out and cycling through my program. Painting does 2 things. It starts to take shape, it makes things look a little prettier, but it also identifies every single detail that's a problem. So, like when you're doing a paint job in a kitchen, it's generally not because it's a brand new kitchen, right? You're gonna have other issues to deal with. For instance, the side of the cabinets look like junk, right? I've got silicone on my trims. I got a huge patch of silicone up here. I have no idea why. And you know it's silicone because when you paint it, the paint runs away and it tries to find somewhere else to be. I've also got a couple of spots where I put too much paint, and I got a couple drips, and I've got a couple of holes in the cabinet. All right, so we got to do all these repairs. We have to build our drawers. We have to rebuild the base of this cabinet so that it's got a toe kick area, right? The base of the toe kick should be about 3 inches behind. So when you're standing here, your feet can go underneath, like so, okay? Otherwise, you're gonna be bent over at the sink all the time, throwing your back out. That's just stupid. So we're gonna fix that. You're feeling it? All right, secret weapon, guys, in case you haven't seen. If you're not a fan of the show and you're just, you know, joining us for this adventure, then you need to know about this product right here. This is a oil paint, flat oil. Comes in a spray can. It's called Kills. It's got a bit of a yellow pigment to it, so don't expect it to cover up problems and be white. But what it does is it fixes all your problems. It's a stain sealer, but it also, okay, bonds to silicone and creates a surface that you can paint. I don't even know why there's a problem here, but there is. Whoever was doing the install had silicone on their hands, and they everything they touched became an issue. All right, so consider that like $8 or $10, whatever, but it's a great thing to have in your tool bag because if you have a problem, you can just kill it. I get it? All right, you're also gonna need some spackling. Okay, so we have holes. I don't like holes. I prefer to have a dent. But if you have cabinets where they're made of MDF, you can't make a dent. All you do is make more problems. So what you got to do, be a little bit liberal on this, which just means to use plenty. There we go. We're going to let that dry and set up. It'll go white when it's dry, and that's how we're going to know when to sand. That's why I use this product. First of all, let's just, and check this out. I stepped here earlier, just a few minutes ago, and I almost went through the floor. There's a support here and a support here, but you know, like that's how soft that is. And you're wondering why we're putting new subfloor in this whole building. That obviously has some water damage related to the fact that there's a sink and a dishwasher here. Oh, there we go. That was an awful lot of work to avoid having to bend over. There we go. Out with the old. I think somebody did that work with a handsaw. That's the floor joist there. That's one there. That's not on one. All right, so like this isn't going to be carrying much weight. I think I'm going to get my level and see if this cabinet's salvageable at all. All right, so we can work with this. We'll just work with it in place. That'll be fine. All right, guys, let's take a look at this. We have a floor joist here, and we have one right here between these water lines. And so the gap that's appearing underneath these straps seems to be consistent with the 1x4. That seems to be consistent with the 1x4, give or take. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to take a 1x4 and I'm going to put it across the back here, up to, and carry the weight from these straps, okay? That way, these screws aren't just holding the weight of the counter by themselves, but these sticks can as well. And we can transfer load through that 1x4 into the wall framing, all right? And we want to have, on the front side, we're going to have the 1x4 sitting right on these 2 points of contact. So I'm going to build my box a little shorter on purpose so that I can screw it all together, okay? And then I'll cap it with another piece of 1x4 using a couple brad nails, just so that I have a nice finished look, because I don't want to have to patch great big screw holes. So I'm going to make a box with 2 supports going across here. All right, that way I can put a shelf on it. I'll just use a 12-inch shelf to come up to my plumbing, because I've got all of these water lines to engage. I've got dishwasher, I've got the fridge line coming in. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4 different supplies here, plus the drain for the dishwasher to consider. So we're going to leave ourselves the room in the back. We'll just try to kind of pretty it up a little bit. Anyway, enough talking. Let's get to building. See if that'll even get in here. Yep, that'll be perfect. That's part's done. Now, to understand how to rebuild this is to understand how the cabinet was built. The cabinet was built out of 1x4 particle board, hello, and then they put their shelf on top of that, and then they built the sticks on top of the shelf. Because this is stick framed. This is not like build a box like you see nowadays. So we're replacing that with just a 1x4. Okay, so while we're down here, let's point this out. This joint right here is the drywall joint, and that's on a stud. So 16 inches away from that, there's another drywall joint, as indicated by these staples through the drywall. So I'm going to throw a screw and a screw down here. Okay, beggars, eh? All right, now, that's good. Okay, now I got something I can actually screw the back corner of this into. Nice. Let's get our box in here now. That offers that some support too, that's good. This is a very strange day. Here we go. Don't worry. See, that's the old frame there, where the kick plate used to go. So I'm going flush with that. So my new kick plate I'm going to add on. Would you look at that? Now we're offering some more support to that and that cross piece. So we want to go flush with the end of this original board. Okay, that's good. But we want to go into the floor joist. I'm going to do this into the floor joist on the other side here too. So you start it, put it in reverse, give it a good burn, and then you lift up to get the angle that you want. Because it gouges out the hole really minutely, and then you go forward. Starting to look like a cabinet. So for the shelf, I'm going to go right from one shelf to the outside of the cabinet. It's 33.5. Perfect. So the shelf's already made, right? So I just buy this right off the shelf. They come just shy of 12 or just shy of 16 inch. So I'm using a 12 because that keeps this all in front of the plumbing, which means I don't have to do any cutting and jigging and screwing around. And it's basically just there so you can put your soap and stuff in, right? It's not going to be perfect, but it'll be close. And since we're adjusting our mindset of what perfect is because we're in a double wide, it'll be pretty perfect for a double wide. Because the teeth are rotating in this direction, then the underside of this is going to be nice and clean. So that's the top of the shelf, all right? This is my mark, and this is just so that when I cut on my mark, I don't have 5 pounds of weight binding down on my blade so it doesn't kick back on me. This is the line, that black mark, that's where my blade actually cuts. So if you want 33.5, you got to put your guide just to the right side of your pencil. Hold your square up against your table, okay? Perfect every time. Now that's an edge. Here we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the back side, because these little squares here are actually designed to help carry the load of the counter down to the shelf. So we're going to get our oscillating tool out, customize the whole environment for our new shelf. Okay. Yep, that's what happens when they get old. They just kind of burn through instead of cut. That's all right. We'll get her done. All right. Oh, that's an awful lot of work just to drop in a shelf, eh? All right, let's see what we got here. There we go. Oh, that's a thing of beauty right there. Now, final test. Yeah, the whole cabinet's a little bit crooked, and that's fine. We're using a face screw door system. What I want to know is, am I forcing this one out of level there? See that? So my bottom is a little further out than it needs to be, right? You see that? Okay, there we go. I can actually make this adjustment right here. So when I attach the face to the shelf on all 3 points, and then to the, I'm gonna fasten it down as well. What we're gonna get is the effect of everything being tied together to the floor joist package. And that is how we're going to install that, so when we hang the door, it doesn't look stupid. Here we are. All right. Okay, so we'll start in the corner, and I'm just going to pin the shelf to this point here. All right, and I'm going to pin it down into the back of the cabinet. Now that's not going anywhere. We'll attach the face of this to that shelf as well. No, that's moving around. That's about as solid as it's gonna get until the countertop goes on. Beautiful day at the office. Here we go. Now we can take our last kick plate, throw it right on there. Oh boy. Is it just me, or are those lower than the rest of the cabinet? No, that's just me. All right, I'm gonna have to do a little rip here. I don't know how much of one, so because we're gonna paint again, I'm just gonna do that. There we go. Let's see if our measurement is right. Oh, look at that. That is bloody well perfect. We're gonna pin that on with a couple of brad nails that'll be almost invisible. All right. Whew. Look at that. Now we can stand like normal people. It's amazing what that 2 inches does, man. That is all the difference in the world. Here we go. All right. These drawers, I know you might not believe me, so let me show you. If I try to pull it out from the front, they get stuck. I crawled around, I tried to figure it out. I can't for the life of me figure out how to pull these drawers out. There's these tabs, nothing works. There's no moving parts anywhere. I'm clueless, except now that the front is gone, you can push it all the way in, right off the wheels. Oh. Oh. Ah. Yep, that's held together really nicely. This one is gonna need a front and a back. Great, okay. Now, I'll just put that out of the way. There we are. Boy, the staples work great when they're all engaged, but man, as soon as it's the only thing holding, that's pretty brutal. That particle board is just trash to work with, eh? All right. So if it broke, I'll fix it. If it ain't broke. There. There, now we got something flat to work on. That's gonna be much better. Okay. Wow. Staples are a lovely thing to work with. This tool, if I pinch the whole staple, maybe we'll call it like a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch above the surface, I can push and wiggle, and then it'll pop out the other side, okay? And then I can pry it back without causing any damage. That's just a much easier way to do the removal than trying to pull it through or trying to cut them off. Just get it out of the way. All right, that's simple. That's a drawer. Now, this is a 1x4. Love it. And we're gonna go with the closed dimension. Let's do it this way, right? That way I can put some weight on it. And we'll measure this off. I'm gonna try 11.5. We'll do our first board 11.5 and see how that works. It's gonna be a bit of an experiment. You'll notice when I cut large on purpose, and then I encroach on my pencil mark. By encroaching on my pencil mark, I can still see a hairline of it left. That's 11.5. So if you start a little wide and you're holding your material, you just use your thumb and you can slide it towards the blade just a hair at a time until you're right on that sweet spot. There we go, rebuilt. It's a lot stronger than particle board, it's solid wood. So now every time somebody pulls on that handle, they'll be pulling on solid wood that's stapled on. And yeah, I feel a lot better about that. So here we are, we're back to our paint problem with this massive ridge here. I think there's a couple of other some minor spots as well on the surface that I'm gonna fix. And then I'm using a 60 grit because we're gonna learn together. I got two options today, 60 or 220. And I know something about enamel-based paint. It's designed to be pretty hardy. So I don't wanna sit here with 220 for like an hour, right? And hopefully this doesn't peel it all off and make a huge mess. Okay, well that worked phenomenally too well maybe. Let's try the 220. This is one of the reasons why you want to do 2 coats. Yeah, okay, that's good. Where else should I have paint ridges? I just want to find one so I can try this again. Oh, there's a little bump. Yeah, you know what? This is not really the right time for a power tool. Here's a bad one. Okay guys, well we're at that stage where I'm almost ready to sand those 2 spackling spots, I guess we'll call them. I'm gonna just take a hand sand now, okay? This is more of a, well, it's kind of a 220 grit as well. I think it comes around 200, but if it's not mechanized, you won't take all your paint off, right? What we're gonna do is we're just gonna feel around for rough surfaces. Remember, we painted this, and the same conditions of the room that we sanded it in, and so the air was full of dust at the time, okay? Check your edges, because it can actually create a really sharp paint edge, and you don't want to have that. Just a quick rub gets rid of all those sharp edges, okay? And we're not doing this for adhesion purposes. We're doing this because, well, you see that little white spot that's right there? That spot was not there a second ago. Okay, so there we go. We're sanding that down until it's nice and smooth. Lovely, okay. I mean, the next coat of paint is the last chance you get to make this perfect, unless you want to really go 3 coats. I don't. Sand your oil-based primer here for the silicone. Just a little light, make sure you don't have any bumps there. I'm going to finish off sanding the rest of this cabinet. Let's just get right to the final goodness. Before we go any more painting, we're going to clean up our area. We're going to sweep, we're going to vacuum. Okay, we're going to try to get as much dust out of this atmosphere as we can. So that'll be a couple of hours. So, whoa, almost fell through that damn floor again. Whew, maybe before I go any further on this project, I should finish the subfloor in the kitchen. That might be a great way to spend the next couple of hours, eh? We're going to keep the scope of work down. I don't want to remove the whole wall. Remember, this is a double wide trailer. That means all these electrical boxes are attached to the drywall, not the studs. So, by making sure we keep our cut nice and narrow, we limit the scope of work because I'm going to be cutting underneath. This drywall will still be engaged, hold the electrical in place, and all I got to do is replace it with something that's 1/4 inch thick. And by only cutting with the tip, there's another stud. I can try to ensure that I'm not going to cut through any kind of electrical line. See there's a stud there. Okay. I'm going to take my 5-in-1 now. And what I'm doing is I'm reaching in and giving it a bit of a twist, so now I'm catching behind the tile with this edge. There's the twist. Okay. That is how you remove a backsplash. Tile and drywall all together. So we got that. Let's try this piece now. So even where I couldn't cut the drywall, it's so thin that it usually just breaks off in one piece, okay? Then we can trim up those little pieces afterwards with our utility knife. So now guys, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take the next few minutes, I'm gonna cut the rest of this out, and we can take care of the process about how to reinstate the proper product and what kind of thin set we're gonna use to attach our tile, because over top of vinyl wrap, we cannot use an adhesive. In previous videos, I've shown you the benefits of tile adhesive when you're doing a small wall tile, but in this case, we've got to go with a thin set cement. So it changes the rules a little bit. All right, guys, next step. We're going to screw our drywall back. We've lost some integrity because the staple that was here was probably holding most of this drywall on. You'll notice that I have 1x3s as part of my structure here. Very important. I put the drywall screw right in the middle. One thing it does is it holds this drywall, but also marks directly from my next back of material where that screw goes, okay? All right, so if you're not aware, Hardy backer comes in 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch. So this is a great solution for a lot of problems, especially in these situations. They also are gridded up. You can see this? They come in 1x1 squares. So it's really easy to measure this stuff, okay? And it's 3 feet by 5 feet. So what I do is I like to set it up kind of like 1x4 on my sawhorses, 6.5. I love anything that you can freehand cut. All right. There, I knew it'd work. There we go. Beautiful. Now, a 1/4 inch cement board does provide you very similar strength to a 1/2 inch piece of drywall. So if you got any question about that, the answer is yes, it's plenty strong enough. Next thing you need to know, though, is what thin set we're going to use, because we've already ruled out adhesive. I'm going to recommend we go with the Schluter All Set. Here's why. It's going to bond really well to the cement board, and it'll bond well and cure properly to a vinyl wrap drywall. So you got 2 different surfaces. This one will absorb water, this one won't, but the one product will work on both substrates, which eliminates the need for me to tear all these walls out, mount all the electrical boxes, do some reframing. This makes this quick work. The process is simple. These doors are exactly 30 inches. And when I take a look at the totality of my frame, top to bottom, I'm 31.5. Okay, which means for me to have it all perfect, especially with different heights, I've got to maintain exactly the same gap from the top of this board to the top of my door, all around the kitchen. So we're going to go with a 3/4 inch gap from the top. What that means is I have a 3/4 inch gap down here as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure down 3/4. Put a little bit of a tiny little mark that I can erase with the eraser later. I am grabbing a piece of 1x4 that is nice and flat, okay? What I'm going to do is take my nail gun and I'm going to use 2 brad nails. So I'm establishing a perfect line at 3/4 of an inch. Here we go. And these couple of holes are really just there so that I have something to set the door on while I'm making my measurements. Because the way we're going to work today is we're going to install the hinges first and then set up the door. So let's get in it. Here's my hinges, 10-pack, Home Depot special. Yay! It's nice to have things convenient. And it comes with a whole bag of screws. I'm going to get a little dish lined up to put my screws in, so that I can manage everything without losing them. And I'm going to be using a drill with a magnetic tip so that I can put my screws on without any difficulty. Okay, so here's my hinge. That was a nice grab there. Okay, there we go. Number 1. And number 2. Okay, that's simple, right? Now, we're going to open this up a little bit. That's right. Okay, so here's my door. Here's the door open. Okay, and it sits right in there. So we'll pretend we're inside the cabinet. That's how that attaches. Okay, screw through the back side, and that screws through the frame side. Because there's 3 holes, we just push right up against it, nice and tight. We're going to get this cabinet door right down onto that wood. And as long as we do the same process with every door, we'll get all the tops of these doors at the right height. Here's a secret for when I'm doing this, to help make sure that your hinges are nice and tight. When you're marking, okay, to help keep everything straight, you're making a small dot, okay? See, small dot, big hole. The screw head sits in that hole. So when you make your hole, if you make the hole to the front of this, the top of this, and the bottom of this one, and you pre-drill your holes, then when you put your screw in, you're pushing the screw head and the metal in 3 different directions, and it helps maintain perfect. If you try to hit the middle all the time, okay, if one of these is off just a little bit, you're gonna end up all crooked. So, it's better to attach the screw and let the head bend a little bit, or create pressure or compression in the wood. And then you're gonna be fine no matter what. And because these are really tiny, and the wood is 3/4 inch, I'm gonna take some blue tape. I'm gonna tape my drill bit and make a little wing for it. I'm gonna use this here. The goal is to make sure that I'm not drilling too deep, okay? So now when I'm drilling, when the tape hits the wood, I know I've gone plenty deep enough. All right? And pre-drilling is necessary, guys, because remember, this is hardwood doors. This is maple. And if you don't pre-drill, you're going to run into all kinds of pain. Okay, so here's the tiny little screw that we're using. And I'm not pre-drilling as deep as the entirety of the screw. I want to make the screw do a little bit of the work, okay? And the thickness of that hole should be less than the thickness of the screw, so it gets good bite. Okay, there we go. So it's just a combination of drilling almost deep enough and a smaller hole than what we actually need. That forces the wood screw to do something here. Otherwise it'll be too loose and it won't last the test of time. We got our height. We're all good to go. First thing we're going to do is get a couple of screws in here while our door is sitting on this wood. Okay, door number 1's in, all right? And you'll see we have an overlay system, so it covers on both sides of the door. And that is what we're going for. Here is the next door. That is gonna be the front. I picked up a box of toothpicks, guys, because we have pre-drilled holes, all right? And just to make sure that all my screws have got good compression, toothpick a la hole. There we go. What that does is just it gets rid of that space. So now the screw has to burrow itself into that hole, and it creates like good compression for us. All right, here we go. Okay. Whew. That step is done. Now let's get our door. Let's get our holes marked. And then we pre-drill. Installing, now that we've marked it, let's install the hinges on a nice flat surface. We'll see if this makes any difference to the process. Now let's see if that makes it a little bit easier up here. Okay. I am already loving this a lot more. I think with the magnetic bit, I'll be able to reach in behind this corner and grab these hinge locations just fine. Okay, beautiful. All right. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Only 17 more to go. Okay, well, that's it for the first floor. Come on, honey. Should just roll right off. There we go. All right. Oh no, you don't want to do that. So when I cut those nails off, can't pull them out because this is pretty hard wood too. So I'm going to just set a number 2 Robertson drill bit over top of it. Use it like a nail punch. Wow. There we go. Now, yes, I'm going to have to do a little bit of a fill and then a touch up on the paint. Sometimes all it takes is a hammer. And anything can be used as a hammer. Wow. That one's going to be a little tougher in the corner here. Okay, good. All right. Now, in order to keep my universe happy, and then one right here. All right, that board is going to give me the restriction at the height that I need. Now, in these hardware packages, they give you 2 different bags of screws, represent the different screw sizes. They also give you the peel and stick felt pad for the doors. We'll get to that later. But I found over the years, just grabbing an old roll of masking tape on a flat surface, it's a great way to corral everything. So here we go, okay? Keeps you from losing your stuff. All right, so here's our little felt pads that come with a 2-sided adhesive on the back. Our job is to peel away that adhesive. Okay, here we are. Right in the corner, okay? Top and bottom. And this is all about making it sound nice. These are not soft closed drawers. They're gonna be a hard closed drawer. So it's this or this. Ah, it sounded pretty much the same, didn't it? Oh, there we go. Now, not all framing and doors are perfect. Turns out this particular door is making contact in the middle. And in that case, might I suggest you put one in the middle, and that'll help. Right? Let's try that again. It still makes noise, but it's not as bad. All right, guys, we got 12 more doors in the kitchen, but in this video, I'm only gonna do the next couple of stages. I'm gonna do the door down here, and I'm gonna do these drawers. Remember, these are the drawers that we had to rebuild from scratch. Let me just show you. There's the original drawer. Here's the original frame, original hardware. I made a new face frame for it, okay? So, in order to install these, we've got to do a little bit of math. Check this out. Let's say our goal is to get the top and the bottom to look perfect, okay? Then there are 2 inches between each of these door faces. Make sense? The problem is when it comes down here, I need this to close at the bottom and the top. And look at, there's not a lot of mercy here. Okay, that is not a lot of gappage. And so instead of doing that, which is gonna have me start up here so you can see a gap, and then I'll finish down here, you probably see a gap. It makes it a little messy. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna install it on the drawer with just a 1/4 of an inch overhang on the bottom, below the drawer, for every one of these, and where they lie, they lie. We gotta work with the whole, not with the totality of the space in this situation. So I came up with this concept. When you're on a job site, you can always find something that's a 1/4 of an inch thick. There it is, ladies and gentlemen, 1/4 inch. Now, this is my drawer. This is my face. And I want this drawer face to go 1/4 inch below that rail, okay? So what I do is I'm going to set this on here, and then I'm just going to set this on the counter. Boom, I'm going to get it perfect every time. Okay, and then all I got to do is screw from the back side and connect my handle. Nice and simple. All right, now let's set up to do this. You'll notice that the drawer faces that I'm dealing with, they've got that hollow middle. It's not very convenient for me. I also don't have a lot of room to screw to the door face, so I'm going to be going right off the very side. Okay, so yeah, so before I get started, I'm just going to pre-drill a hole off the counter near the top where I'm going to set my screw. Now, that's half the work. Here, that's the face. Okay, so once again, get my clamp ready. Measure off to 18 millimeters. Perfect. Now you'll see this type of screw. This is kind of like a cabinet screw that has a built-in washer. So that's phenomenal. It's a wood screw, and we don't need to pre-drill into the door for this one. Just got to give it some resistance. And that washer head keeps it from driving through the face. Okay, perfect. Done and done. We have a drawer face. Now we're going to build this from the bottom up. There, it's going to be perfect. Whew. Okay, so before we go any further, 18 mils is my number. Okay. So for everybody at home who doesn't want to have a surface mounted hinge, you want to have the hidden hinge. And this is a decision you need to make in the very beginning of your remodeling process, okay? Because leaving the holes left me a template. If you want to get rid of that, I'll show you this. I went and picked these up. These are brand new on the market, and this is a hidden hinge, okay, for a face frame type of a door. So you can see I got 1/2 inch material here. So this is the typical kind of hinge reset that you go in a door. And basically what we do is we get a Forstner bit, we drill the hole to a certain, and Forstner is a flat bottom hole bit, okay? And you make it to the point where you draw that little circle, and then you screw these screws in, and then you bring your door over, and you would actually attach it like this, right here, that little space. Okay, the problem with this is this material is not very strong. So what I would recommend, if you're going to do that, grab yourself some 1x2s when you get started, measure to cut, glue, screw them together, okay? And then while you're repairing your screw holes, get something like a product like plastic wood, sand off the surface of all of these existing holes, fill them all with plastic wood, screw holes, old hinge holes, prep your surface, sand it smooth, be ready, then you can do your painting. And then when you're done, you can attach your hinges to your door, okay, anywhere you like. And then you can follow this process, because what we're going to do is we're going to actually take a piece of this material, clamp it to the counter, so we have a positive stop, so we can lift our door into place and then screw it in. All right, so let's just start with the biggest cabinet I've got on the base here. We're going to do the cabinet system now. So here we go. We're going to measure 33 actual inches. Wow. And we don't need to be that tight. We'll be a little more merciful. So that's 33. I'm going to take about 1/2 inch off. All right. And we're going to take that and we are going to screw that on, because we want to be able to show you the difference in the kind of damage that a screw makes versus a nail. Okay, not everybody's got compressor tools handy, and you don't need them if you're going to paint your kitchen. All right, here we go. You can always brush and roll this stuff. Now I'm picked a piece of scrap 1.5 inch material, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just install it straight into the frame. I'm going to just go in reverse first, okay? Somewhere out of... Okay, we're going to get it nice and attached here. Now I've got a positive stop. I've got exactly 1.5 inches, and I'm going to be able to cut this board to fit every little scenario that I run into, so that I always have a 1.5 inch gap to the top of my door. We're going to follow the same procedure, install the hinges, mark all the doors, blah, 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 blah. This one moves an awful lot. I'm going to have to attach that to the countertop later. But you get an idea. Having a positive stop when you're working this way solves all your problems and keeps everything consistent. If you want help and you want to be able to do things with confidence and do them right the first time, then consider joining the membership. What you do is just take a look on your computer screen or your phone, hit the join button, okay? And for $5 a month, you do a little sign up. You can become part of our team. We're going to be able to have you join us on our Discord page. That'll be amazing, because then you can connect with a bunch of thousands of other DIYers all around the country who've experienced situations that you're going through, and you can glean from them and their experiences that they've had, get information about different products that are available to you. If you have questions, you can ask me directly in the forum, all right? And I'll be able to help you out. Now, here we go. We got our template set up. We're marking our presets again. We will pre-drill and start hanging. There we go. Okay. Brilliant. Okay. So now we're going to tackle this problem together. It's significant because I can fix these hinges by manipulating them, but I need to drill new holes. This is the corner, the cabinet that was kind of falling apart, had to rebuild. So not a big surprise that structurally it's not sound. So what we're going to do is take the toothpicks in the existing holes, fill them up, and then we're going to manipulate those hinges till this gap is closed, and we're going to re-drill. This is going to allow us, by re-drilling on the inside of that hole, we'll put the screw there after where it's manipulated. It'll keep it from sliding back on us. And putting that little bit of wood in there is all that it's going to take. Where's my hole? There it is. Even more aggressive than I thought it was being. Okay. There it is. It's a hell of a lot better than it was. Okay. Alrighty. So just so you know, I'm going to show you the two different kinds of damage, one from the nail, one from the screw. Here's the screw, and depending on your material, this is MDF. MDF Really sucks in my opinion, because every time you put a hole in it, it does two things. A, it gets a hole, but B, it blows up like a volcano. It's like tectonic plates hitting each other and it makes mountains, right? So look at, like, you have to actually carve the top off. Then you've got to like sand it down. And then, if this is even gonna work, I haven't used this gun in weeks. Yeah, let's just make a hole that we can get some goo. We're back to some good caulking, and I'm just gonna throw some on my blade. All right. And then that's the preparation to fill that hole. Okay, nice and simple. Now the nail hole, although it doesn't have a ridge, still needs to be done smooth. Still needs caulking. And now you can see the total extent of that damage. That also means it's going to need to be painted. And the way we paint that is by using a 4-inch mini roller, okay? And it has to be a foam roller, not a microfiber. And foam rollers with just the tiniest amount of paint. We'll show this at the end of the video. You can touch up spaces like this and make them look perfect. So it doesn't matter if it's a little hole or big hole, like from a screw. It's the same solution. A putty knife, some caulking, sanding block, and you're good to go. So those are 2 applications so you can set yourself up for success. Here's the third. So we've nailed it, we've screwed it, now we're gonna clamp it. All right, here we go. We're gonna start off the countertop. Okay, we're gonna come over here, lift this to the top corner over here, and then we'll clamp again. All right, now we have a positive stop location. And remember I talked about the extra gap from the drawers? That's what we're going to be dealing with. And there's no way to escape it. So let's not worry about it right now. Let's just focus on getting our door marked and installed. And then the next thing we're going to do is install the doorknobs. I'm going to show you my tips and tricks for that. It's a relatively quick procedure. If it's done right, it'll make sure that your work looks like it was done by a pro. There we go, much better. Okay, now, for everybody who wants to know, how do you do your touch-ups on your minor imperfections? Well, here's a classic imperfection. Just a little rub, but it probably got caught on something on the countertop, scratched it around. Let me go get my paint roll and I'll show you. All right, so a lot of you guys don't know the difference between microfiber and foam. This is microfiber. It's very soft, it's smooth, but you can see that it's got a lot of texture. Foam is really, foam. The difference is this leaves a texture on the surface when you paint. This doesn't. So when you're doing cabinetry work, use the foam rollers. And it goes like this. You can actually press down, clean the excess paint out of the roller. More is not your friend here, okay? Gently, to the point where it's barely going on. And just work it and work it and work it until you get the kind of coverage that you're looking for, where it's consistent. That's it, okay? That is a really nice finish. That'll solve all your problems. Gentle. If you have too much paint or you press too hard, like I'm barely holding it against the material. If you press too hard, you're gonna get drips. All right, you don't want drips. You got really nice edges everywhere, right? Let's keep the edges nice and strong and safe. There we go. You can even do touch up in the middle of a door. All right. Do we have anything else? Oh, we have one up here. Let's get rid of that. There we go. Touch ups. Okay. Brilliant. Make sure you have one of these. Now, let's just jump right into the handles. All right, it's a relatively simple system. And the way you keep it simple, so you don't need to spend $600, is you buy knobs, not handles. Handles are trickier. Now, the basics here are really simple, guys. Make sure you don't have to do touch-ups where your handles are going. If you want to take a day, do all your touch-ups, come back and do the knobs the next day, that's fine. Take a little piece of tape. What we're looking for is the intersection from this corner to this corner, halfway through. So basically the middle thickness of this translated down to the middle thickness of this, right? So just throw a piece of tape right where you're going to be going. Then you take your square, and on here it measures the thickness. That's 2 1/8, 2 1/4. So half of that is 1 1/8. That's the same thickness. That makes life simple. We just take our marker. We are 2 1/4. Yeah. 1 1/8. That's my line vertically. And I am 2 1/4. I am 1 1/8 here. It's a little higher than 1 1/8. Yeah, this bottom piece is actually thicker than this side piece. Wow, okay. I was like, visually that didn't make any sense. Now, open up the door, look behind. Okay, make sure that when you drill your hole, you're not gonna drill through your cabinet, all right? That's really the key. And if you can do this, that is the job right there. Okay, now my wife bought these on Amazon. Always make sure the inside of your door, you clean that up, okay? You don't have any extra wood laying around. We're gonna take this screw. This is a special screw. They come in metric as well, the M4s, and these are an 832, okay, Imperial. Okay, so these are designed to be cut off really easily, depending on the thickness of the material and the length of screw you actually need. So we're gonna put in the screw. We're gonna take a look at this. We're gonna count 1, 2, 3 segments, and then I've got 3 or 4 threads. That's perfect. So we're gonna count 1, 2, 3 segments. That's my mark. And I'm gonna take this tool here. It's called a side cutter. Okay, you can see straight on, it cuts on the one side. We're gonna lie that up in that predetermined groove there, okay, and give it a good squeeze. Boom. Perfect every time, okay? You stick that back in, you've got a few threads sticking out. You connect your drill on this over here. Put your handle there. Uh-oh. This particular handle is, the threads are really concave way inside. Okay. So instead of snapping off 3, we're going to snap off 2. All right. Tricky handle. Most handles have the thread right at the base, but this one doesn't. See, that one goes all the way to there before it grabs. And then we screw. All right. And it should be nice and tight. You don't want to do any damage to the surface, but you don't want to be able to untighten that too easily either. All right, that's good. Good to go. There's my knobs. Okay. Now I'm going to drill all of these holes. Before we go away, let's do the drawers. They're a little trickier. These are unique. So, same concept. We're going to take our tape, our painter's tape, now that we're done painting. Put it in the middle-ish. I mean, most people are adept enough to understand where the middle of something is just by looking at it. But we really want to line this up to be perfect. So when you're walking into the room and you can look across the room and see that everything is lined up, that's a sign of somebody who took their time to measure and be a pro. Ultimately, that's what we want as DIYers, to have our work look like a pro did it. That's where you get money for your dollar here now. Straight edge. Line up all the drawers. They're all a little wiggly and jiggly, okay? But push them all to one side. Drop your laser line on here. all we gotta do is measure the top drawer to find the middle. These are 14.5, which means 7 1/4. There's my mark. Okay, so move my laser right onto that mark. Oh, it's sensitive. There we go. Now, draw that red line. And a round knob installed in this fashion, no matter how imperfect you make it, it's still going to look perfect, okay? All right. Single knobs are much easier to install and give the illusion, if they're round, of lining up, because they don't have a definitive edge to compare to. So they're really handy that way. Now, every single one of these is a 6-inch drawer. We're going to mark down at 3 inches. We have nothing else horizontal in the area to compare to. Just make sure when you're measuring, your face is in front of the number. You're not looking on an angle, because that is how you make mistakes. All right. There's my cap. Make sure you grab a drill bit that's just a little bit wider than the threads of the screw so it passes easily. We're creating compression here, and that's it. We're not trying to grab the wood. And then set that right in the cross, and then drill away. Nice and slow to begin with. Okay, confirm that you come through the other side. Okay, so we're going to put the whole screw in. Now the last one, I only had 3 threads. 3 of those little rings were sticking out, and it just caught, okay? So even though this is recessed, I think I'm going to take this off. It looks a little bit too big in this environment. Okay, let's give that a try. Yeah, that looks like it's going to be perfect. Yeah, see that? I'm going to catch a few turns. Okay, now we can get the drill in here. A little bit of compression, not too much. All right, there we go, solid gold. Now, just out of curiosity, if you're wondering, what if in my situation, I need something in between? I can't cut there, I need to cut off a half. Does this still work? The answer is yes. Just got to work a lot harder for it, okay? Cheers. Now when you go shopping for your butcher block countertops, there are a few different woods, there's different base colors, there are also different sizes. You can go 6, 8, 10, 12 feet. Just make sure that you line up your measuring with your product based on availability and your ability to get it delivered. I found out the hard way that I bought a 12-footer and they wouldn't deliver it to my house. So I actually had to rent a truck with a great big bed to go and pick that sucker up, which affected the affordability issue. So in hindsight, it would have been better for me to buy 3 pieces instead of 2, because I've got an 8 and a 12. I'm going to chop it all down. So really the simple concept of countertops is this. They make the countertop to fit a standard size kitchen cabinet, and all kitchen cabinets are standard size. So it gets rid of a lot of the guesswork for you. You don't have to measure the thickness. They're always 24 1/4 or 24, give or take a hair, okay? So you're gonna be fine, because they make the countertops themselves to be 25 inches wide, so you're always gonna have an overhang. Now you're already in business. All you gotta do is measure the length and then cut it to fit. So I recommend you have a factory edge. Always measure from your factory edge, thinking I'm gonna put that where it's exposed, okay? And that means that all the cuts that you make are gonna be covered by your backsplash that you're gonna install later. And that is money in the bank. So here we go. We're gonna take a measurement. And I'm exactly 42.5 up to the stove. And I've got a nice little gap over here on the other side. So I'm gonna be comfortable to install that stove later. So we're gonna just jump right into this. We're gonna cut a 42.5 inch piece. Let me just double check my measurement. Yep, 42.5 inch piece. And then we're gonna show you how to use the mending plates, glue it all together, and install it so it's secure. And this way I've got 2 blocks here, 2 blocks there. When I cut this, nothing's gonna fall. I'm not gonna bind my saw, which is gonna be fantastic. Here we go, 42.5. We're gonna mark this. Remember, the cut line goes up against the back wall. No one's ever gonna see it. We don't need any fancy track saws. We don't need clamps, we don't need anything else. Just put a couple of marks in your pencil. Draw a line. Follow that all the way off. Here we go. Now the only other thing we gotta know is the thickness. Slab is 1.5 inches thick, okay? But I'm gonna set this at 1.75 inches. That way it'll cut all the way through, and I'm not at risk of damaging my floor. Voila. There's our first piece of counter. And it's as simple as setting it in place, you'd think, right? Well, one more thing we gotta do. This is what we're gonna call the underside. And just so that we don't get confused, put a big U on it, okay? We're already at that place we wanna introduce the mending plate. Now, mending plates are awesome. This is Simpson strong tie steel. This is for doing structural work, all right? Now, I was in the furniture business at one point for a little while, and we used mending plates all the time. We were attaching office desks. And basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna take advantage of this little space here where this countertop goes. We're gonna attach the mending plate on the underside, right near the edge, okay? And then when we're gonna flip it and install it, when we get the next cut, we can install it. We can add glue on the joint, go underneath, and then screw those mending plates, tighten the whole frame up together. We're going to show you how to do that to get a professional look. We're looking here 1.5 to 22.5. That is my space. I'm going to give myself some markers, and I want to do the 2 mending plates. Okay, here we go. Now I have 1 inch to spare underneath there. I do not want to have this metal coming in contact with this framing. Okay, so I've already done the measuring. My countertops are 25 inches wide. I have 1 inch of extra space. So as long as we do it this way, we're gonna be just fine. Now, I wanna pre-drill my hole with a tiny bit. I've got 1 inch screws. I have 1.5 inch surface. And I have a thread here on that bit. It's only 3/4, and that's fine. We're gonna just do a little pre-drilling. Hardwood, if you don't pre-drill, is just gonna split. Now, obviously we don't need all of these holes. This mending plate is extremely large and extremely strong. But what I did learn in my years of doing furniture work is since a mending plate isn't going to be where you have any framing, the stronger the steel you use, the better. Okay. Yeah, see, screws have a shear strength of around 60 to 80 pounds. And it's really hard to figure out that sweet spot. There we go. 3 out of 4 ain't bad. All right, now we've got this countertop ready to roll. Let's just stick it in place. We'll measure and cut the next one. All right, here we go. You can see why it's necessary to install this in sections and don't pre-assemble. All right, now, like in every world, no square is perfectly cornered. That's nice and tight on both sides. I got a gap over here. I got a little bit of a gap over here forming. It's not going to matter, because let's just talk about the end game so that you don't get intimidated with this. I'll show you something. I'm picking these products for a reason, because the tile is thick enough to cover almost every gap. Okay? See that? With a little bit of cement, even this big gap is covered. It's going to look amazing. All right? And that's why we use this. When you're doing a DIY project, consider how out of square your house might be, and recognize that sometimes a thicker tile on the wall is the solution to the problem. Instead of trying to scribe the back wall to be perfectly square, driving yourself nuts, it's easier for me to cut this next piece, stick it in, and if the wall isn't straight, just make this seam perfect, and then fill that gap with a proper tile job. So now what we want to do, because we have 8.5 feet left over, it's enough to fill all the way from here to here. Now this is our sink location. We'll cut that out later, but today we just want to get this install done. And check this out. We are looking at 97 3/8, and then we're going to measure again up here where that 1-inch overhang is. 97 1/4. Okay, now we are going to take the shortest of those two distances, 97 1/4, and we're going to cut the whole slab that way, knowing that the gap in that back corner is going to be eliminated by the tile work. Okay. All right, so this is a huge slab, and I've got to be able to attach the mending plate and then roll it over, so it's easier to just do it right here on the floor. Just a warning, these are really heavy, okay? You might want to have 2 people help navigate this. Ay, ay, ay. I know it's not granite, but it ain't far from granite, if you know what I mean. Okay. This is, yeah, that's gonna be a pain in the ass. So the plan here is really kind of simple. I have to lift the counter. I'm going to take my scrap block underneath to brace this so that the edge of this was exposed on this side, and then the other edge is exposed from underneath that I can get under the cabinet. I want to glue both sides, all right, so that when I set them together, I get a really good bond. I'm trying not to pinch off any of my fingers today, like I did the other day. That was a bad day. Okay, there we go. We've got access for the glue. Let's just take advantage of our scrap tile, get this started. Okay, now, we don't want to have so much glue go on here that when I go underneath, it's raining glue all over my face. So we're going to try to do just 1 bead. Here we are. And then I'm going to just try to finger that in like so. Okay, I'm going to do the same from the underside. Here we are. Here we are. Okay, I think that's got it. All right, yeah, delicious. Okay. How many does this make you feel like you're in kindergarten again? Wood glue. Now we're going to lift. All right. And set it. Okay. Now, instead of trying to drag this countertop over, we're going to go like this, where we know we have framing and wedge this over. All right, now it doesn't have to be perfect right now. It will be in a minute. Now I'm going to go underneath, and I've got a mending plate with a big hole, and I'm going to put the screw tip, the very tip, right on the edge. I'm going to pre-drill right at the edge of that hole. And then when the thickness of the shaft of that screw hits that, it's going to pull the plate over, and it's going to slide that piece nice and tight, in theory. So let's see if this works out. Boy, I'm ever glad I lost some weight. So here we are, and we're going to just look for one screw here and one screw at the other end just to get this lock done. Here we are, right on the edge. Okay, and then back here. Alrighty. Oh, my back. I was actually laying on a screw. What in the hell is going on here? How do I get that to fix? I have got to get a shim of some sort in here. Okay, so you see how the glue squeezed out? That actually worked. But this counter seems to have a bow in it. The long one. I get that nice and tight. There it is there. Okay, needs a little bit more support right on the seam. I'm going to leave that in there while it's drying. Unfortunately, because it's wood, this particular countertop has a little bit of a bend to it. Sometimes that's material shipping, handling, storage, whatever. So there's going to be a bit of an oddity here with this edge. So what I am going to do is I'm going to fill all this up with some glue. There's going to be some sanding involved with getting this finished. All right, it's not the end of the world. So let's just, we'll get sure we get a nice seal here, rub that all in. Once all that's dry, we'll be able to polish it down and buff it out. Let's just put on the brakes for a second. I have an 8-foot piece of countertop left. I have a almost 3-foot piece. I have a 3-foot piece, and I have this piece, which means I'm going to employ a system that I use. Always go with the longest piece first, and then if you make a mistake, you can then use that for another piece, right? I have enough work here that if I screw up the cut for my waterfall on my miter, I can actually square end it and stick it over there. So I get 2 shots at this. I almost went and cut that and gave myself no mercy. Now, here's the cool thing. This existing countertop is also 1.5 inch, which means I've already got the point for my waterfall to measure to. So before I remove this, you thought I was just another pretty face, eh? Here we go. 35.5. And what are the odds? Of course it's not the same. Really, like 35 1/8, 35.5. Okay. Here's one of these situations where what you want to do is, because this is going to be flat and this is mitered, this will then travel with a perfect 45-degree cut, and then you have to scribe where it hits the floor, okay? And we can do that. So we're going to take the longest measurement, cut the block, put on our miter, then we'll scribe the base. First thing we're going to do is take a total measurements of all 3 pieces that we need, so we can find out what our mercy is. I got 35.5. I've got 16.5. And what is this? 32 and 34.5. 60, 69, 70, 86.5. Okay. So we have 11.5 inches in mercy. So wisdom would say we cut the slab, the long length, just a little bit longer than we need. Then we can put it up on a table, and then we can actually cut the miter, all right? Instead of trying to cut that on the floor. So let's do that. So the first one is going to be 35.5. We'll cut it at 36.5. Then we'll do the miter. Then we'll then we'll do the miter, and then we'll scribe it to the floor. Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot what the word scribe was. That's awesome. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here is take my square and check to see how flat is the countertop coming from the factory here. I want to know if there's any kind of a warp or anything. Then I have to duplicate that warp on both sides of the miter. It actually looks pretty good. So this should work out all right. And again, I'm going to mark this all underside, okay? So that we don't have any problems. Now, my measurement was 35.5, giving myself a little bit of mercy. So I'm going to measure off at 36.5, okay? So, now I got a measurement of exactly how far back from my finish line I'm going to be attaching a piece of material with clamps as a straight edge. And that is an obscure, weird number of 4 3/4. Okay. So, 4 3/4. Now we want to measure 35.5. 35.5. Okay. Let's just do the math. It might be easier. And minus 4 3/4 makes it 31.5. Makes it 30 3/4. Go the other way. 34, 35.5, 30 3/4. And we'll measure to 30 3/4. That'll be more exact. Okay. All right. Now we need clamps. Got to focus on keeping this plate tight up against my material. Okay, and that's the only thing I can focus on. Everything else has no business being entered into my mind. Why is it wandering all over the damn place? Blade is bloody well wandering. It's also getting really hot. We're going to stop. I'm going to go and buy a brand new blade. This is a lot of wear and a lot of heat, and I don't have enough teeth on this blade. The blade is wandering, so that means that everything else is moving in one direction, but the blade is starting to go like this and is warping under the heat. So I've got to go and get a finer tooth blade that is able to cut this a lot cleaner and not create so much heat. All right, I will be back in a few minutes. Okay, so I went shopping and got myself this. This is what we call a ultra finish 60 tooth blade. You can see the difference in the two blades right out of the gate. We'll change this back out. Okay, so now we're back in business. Problem is, now that I've got this cut that's running crazy on me, no saw is going to start here and then cut a brand new line. There's an opportunity. It's easier to follow this curve now than it is to cut a new line, okay? So you know how I say, better to start with your longest cuts and then work your way down, because this cut is now not going to be going on that part of the counter. I'm going to use the other piece to cut this cut. This one's just going to be cut square off. We're going to salvage it and install it on the other side. So, this is now the longest that my countertop can be right here. Okay? So, what I'm going to do, I know this was marked as the underside, but in this scenario, I don't have much of a choice. And we're going to cut this off and try to salvage as much of this top as we can. So, from the blade to the side of my plate, my measurement is 5 1/16. So, There it is, okay? So now I'm gonna get the measurement from the factory edge to here. 28 13/16. And we'll mark that here. That's about as precise as I can possibly be. Now we will clamp these two down and cut away. Let's do this. All right. Much better. Now, we don't have a whole lot of options here, so let's just get that in position. All right, it overhangs just a hair, which is not ideal. I would have rather had it about another 1/2 inch or so, something closer to where the tile was going to finish, but you know what? Considering this is the only option I have for saving the countertop, I'm going to go with it. Now, I'm not going to install this one because you can see it's got some work damage on the corners. I'm going to do some sanding on this first and then bring it back in position, because really what I'm doing, I'm dying to see if that new blade will cut that 45. Well, here goes everything. This is either going to be monumentous or an absolute failure. Okay, let's do this. Nice and slow, we'll let the blade do all the work. Well, there we go. I didn't get any burning hardly at all that time. Fantastic. Okay. Now, one thing that you want to consider is this. A 30-inch stove is a 30-inch stove, and you want a 30-inch space. You don't want a 31, okay, with your countertop. So they might have gave you a little mercy with the cabinet, but the countertop you want to have pretty exact. So the stove is actually 30 inches. It's a 1/16 shy of that. Okay, so we pushed it all the way we can to that countertop. We're going to measure actual dimension here now to this point right here. This is the furthest point on the cabinet. This thing right here. That gets me 15 3/4. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a full 1/8 off of that. So I'm going to go 15 1/8. I mean, 15 5/8. Yes, okay. And we have the same measurement here, so 15 5/8, so that I end up a little short here. And the reason for that is, in the future, if somebody wants to, they can put in a different kind of stove that comes with an integrated flange on it, okay? And that actually allows you to set the height of the feet and then slide it over top of the countertops. That keeps you from getting debris and stuff falling down and making it filthy. It's a new innovation in stoves, and it would be lovely, but we're not going to do that on this particular project. We're just going to set it up for future success. Let's just toss that right here. Again, here's my mitered edge. I want to line that up with the... Oh, that is a thing of beauty. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our measurement from this point to the floor in both locations. That'll allow us to transfer that actual dimension of contact with the floor to our slab that's already cut. So what we have to do before we move any further is make sure that this is level. Okay, and we are out. And we knew we were. So now it is time for some shims. We're going to start off with doing that, nice and simple. From 0 to hero, we're going to add that extra 1/16. See how much of a dramatic effect that makes. And I am way up in the air here. Okay, here we go. That is better. Wow. I love it when a plan comes together. That is perfect. Check that out. We got contact in both corners here. We got contact in both corners there. We're level. Now I can measure and get my number to the floor. So I'm over there thinking to myself, why is it smaller on the back? We fixed the level, right? That didn't make a lot of sense to me. So then I realized, wait a second, I'm standing here on the floor measuring, and then I just reach over and I measure, but this is a floating floor. So whenever you have floating floor, it's not fixed, and it can move up and down depending on what kind of situations it's dealing with. Now watch this. Let's get real close in on this, and we'll see how much this floor moves when I step on it. So here we go. Now let's go back up to the measurement of the countertop now that I have my weight there. Now I'm reading almost 36 1/4. That's pretty intense. Right? So in truth, the floor is actually much more parallel to the countertop than I thought. So I don't need to scribe it. What I needed to do was measure with the floor under weight. Remember that in the future when you're dealing with floating floors. They can be in two positions, right? Direct contact with the subfloor or not. Amazing. Okay, so let's take a look at what's going on here. Yes, I'm a little tall. I get that. Okay, but look at the back wall. Look at my gap here. That's just ridiculous. That's how out of plumb this wall is, right? And that's what I'm dealing with. I've got a couple options. I can cap this wood with a piece of painted stock, okay? And I'm gonna be left with a little gap, and that's fine. I can fix that with a piece of a little bit of shoe mold or corner mold. I can really overlap it, and so that nobody can see past the gap, but that'll look stupid. The question is this tile thick enough to cover that gap once it's installed? And if it is, can I just pull this top piece of countertop out to make this work? That's taking a really big chance. So instead, one more cut. We're going to do a cut line down here and buy some extra space. It's just at the bottom where the most majority of this problem is. Okay, so I'm going to go from about here to the bottom. We'll take out that quarter. We'll be able to slide that in properly. Now that gets us tight to the wall. That's much nicer. And I'm finding myself, I'm still running into this height issue. I'm a full 1/8, if not just a hair more. Okay, one more cut. Bloody well knew that was going to happen. So we got the right dimension, we got the right cut. And herein lies the problem with using wood. So we can't just drop this in and put it where we want to put it and just glue it because of the warp. We've got to eliminate the warp. So the height is perfect. The only way to eliminate a warp in wood is to screw it out. Yeah, that's not exactly what I wanted to hear today, is it? All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a combination of the following. And this is going to be intense. I don't want it on the top, but I want the screws on the side because this is the one that's warped. This piece here also has a bit of a warp. So believe this or not, they're both the culprit. But I can deflect this one while I'm screwing this one in the middle, and then we can secure it with 2 more holes. So what we're going to do is mark off 3 locations where the wood is relatively blonde and doesn't have any grain. And so we're going to go 3/4 of an inch. That's a really big square, but we're going to go right about here. And like this one. And in the middle here. Okay? This is one of these moments where it's like, well, what is Jeff going to do to fix this mess, right? I have 2 pieces of wood, they're both bowed. I can't close that gap. It's not easy, so I went to the store and I bought myself some supplies. Now this is a piece of square steel, and it does not bend easy, where the countertop actually has some flex. So, and then I bought some clamps here. Let's get this open up to about 2.5 inches, give or take. We're going to clamp a piece of steel to the end here. Okay. And now you get to see, look at the gap that's showing up over here. Like I can slide my tool right underneath there. Okay. So now we're going to do the same thing at the other end, and hopefully it flattens out. So the trick here is to buy steel that's stronger than the wood. Now the question is it flat? Or did the steel bend? So let's just, oh, I'm liking that. There's no more rock. Well, there's a little bit of rock. Okay, so the only other thing that we can do here to put even more pressure on it is to put a shim in the middle. All right, we're just going to keep engineering this until we get the kind of compression that we're looking for. Because until this works, I will not stop. Now, the metal can be free to bend as well. It's not going to make a difference, because I'm going to expect that the wood is going to get flattened out under that much compression. We'll just keep on checking the countertop itself. There, perfectly flat. Okay, problem solved. We have to do the same to this side. Okay, because once we get them flat, we can glue it, line them up. But let's just go through this. This is a design feature. There's no real actual need to make a waterfall countertop, except that my wife thought that would be a really fun look. Now I'm starting to understand why people don't do it. Nice and simple. We'll get the shim in here. We'll get the same effect. Oh, hockey. Oh! Yeah, that sucks, eh? All right. Okay. So now, and this is not the time to be cheap, we have the ability to do some sanding on this afterwards. Now, we also want to force glue up here. Gonna make a hell of a mess, I know it. It's okay. Glue is somewhat water soluble. Okay. Now, we're gonna put this together. We're gonna clamp the bar clamps together now. This looks a little almost prehistoric, right? I mean, one more thing that we're going to do here, because having that glue do the work of all this compression, it's not fair to ask that. I've got these 3 locations here that we're going to actually put screws. Right? Then we're going to take our 2-inch construction screws and we're going to drive those in, but before we do that, we are going to take a different drill bit and create a pocket hole for that screw to sit in. Okay, so we're going to use the existing hole, nestle the tip in there. That's it. Just bore out enough that we can get the screw head in there. Perfect. And that pre-drilled hole, the tip of this grabs it and keeps this hole centered. So now the screw will drive straight in. This bit's not 2 inches long and it is hardwood, so now I'm going to drive it in again and bury it one more time. That gives me that extra 1/4 inch, 3/8 of depth that I need. Whoa! Okay, now you can see that the screw that I'm using as a pilot, the threads of my screw are just a little bit wider. Okay, you should be able to see the threads of the screw show up on each side of that bit. And that's why we want to drive screws, because we need to close this gap permanently. Here we go. Okay, once these screws are in, now this connection is going to be under the power of that thread, that compression. It's going to provide that strength so it doesn't crack over time. All right, there we go. Okay, that's step number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, one more thing we want to do here. Just getting the rough edge sanded down. Beautiful. I'm going to take my rag and I get it nice and wet. And I want to clean out the glue in that corner. Nice. And this is round 1. I'm going to do 2 rounds of this. Okay. And then tomorrow we'll be able to sand it all back. But this product, this stuff is amazing. It is it's not a 2-part epoxy wood filler. It's a different kind of formulation. It's probably an acrylic. But the point is this. This product is smooth, clear. It can come in different wood tones. And we're just using it to fill. It doesn't shrink very much, but it will shrink on a hole like that. Okay, so that's why I said we're going to use 2 applications. The other thing that this compound does is it'll hold a screw. It can be chiseled and sanded, all that kind of good stuff. So now what we do is we're going to use it like a putty. And we're going to fill up this little gap in the countertop. Because there's no amount of any work that you can do in advance. It's going to close up that countertop look to be perfect. So what we do is we use a little bit of this stuff. You know, and I'm not a professional woodworker, guys. I've just learned a few tricks over the years. If you've got better systems, by all means share it in the comment section. But I know that for the majority of my jobs, I can rely on this plastic wood product to solve my issues. Okay, plastic wood to the rescue. We're going to just scrape off the excess because that just removes a lot of work with the sander afterwards. Okay, so it dries really, really quickly. The sooner you get after tooling it, the better off you are. All right, there we go. Now our patient is in traction. But now the glue has got time under compression with the screws and the clamps to be able to really set up overnight. We'll take the assembly apart tomorrow. We'll stick it in place. We'll attach our countertops. We're going to shim them so they're all perfect, level, and flat. Now it's been about 10 minutes. And just going to sand smooth the excess. And this is where you want to just close your eyes and you can feel the divot. This product sets up really quickly. Yep, there's still a ridge. It'll be the same. I've already put a second application, but I wanted to give you an idea how fast it sets up. There we go. Okay, well, here we go. Full disclosure, we did this 2 days ago, and I am petrified to undo all the clamps, but in theory, it's glued and screwed, and it's had 48 hours to set up. So, with any luck at all, we aren't going to have any cracks. And if we do, we will then re-screw all of this to the cabinet on both sides and then filler the crack again, and hopefully that won't crack over time once it's rock solid in place. It's time to take the patient out of traction. Get those out of here. Yep, that happened. All right. See if we can maneuver this in place without damaging it. Okay, I'm liking that. It didn't crack. All right, well, I'm gonna sand it a couple inches off the wall just so I can get in here and get a nice clean edge. And then, that's gonna look pretty sexy. Yep, sir, nothing wrong with a sexy kitchen. All right, you can see over here, guys, we have a little bit of burning from the cutting process, and the stove only goes about halfway up the wood. So we want to make sure that we clean this up, and we'll use this as well. We'll use the 40 to get back to bare wood. Whew. All right, now we're going to go through the same process. We're going to do the 80, the 150, the 220, get it all finished up. All right. All right, so I know everybody's got the question, Jeff, what about these 3 screw holes that you patched? Nice and flush, but they're a little noticeable, you can tell, right? So what we do is we do a wet test. When you do the wet test, it simulates the oil, and then you see how visible or not they are. So we're just gonna go like this, okay? Now, the wood is gonna go dark, and that's going to stay light. So the secret here is, I have to run to the store, and I have to go out and get just a little bit of stain. That's like a golden color. Okay, and that'll darken that up. And I'm going to use an artist brush to apply that to all 3 spots before I put my oil on. And that should get a much more, how shall we say, hidden look, all right? But first, finishing the sanding, 150, 220. Now it's time to slide it into place. Okay. Yeah, I'm really pleased with that. My goodness, what a look. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the wood extending past the cabinet on this side. I want to mount that, and I want to throw a couple of screws underneath. So what we're going to do is pre-drill. You should see there's like a piece of a 3/4 by 3/4 stock here. It's part of the frame. So we're going to drill through that 3/4 stock, pre-drill right into the countertop. Get a bit of a pilot hole going. And I'm going to use a 2-inch screw right into that block. There we go, it's pushing off the wall, so I'm going to hold it with my right hand, and then I'm going to back it out, and then go again. There we go, it's a nice tight fit. All right, now I got to crawl underneath again and reattach the counter. Again, we drive it in, then we drive it out, then we drive it in again, just to make sure that we don't lift the countertop. And then add some pressure down. There we go. Whew, one of those will be enough. All right. Well, there we go. We got butcher block waterfall. That is spectacular. We're going to do a little water test here. That's about as close as we're going to get. And on the whiter wood, not the darker, it's even more perfect. Okay? So hopefully you can see that we're gonna try to eliminate as much of the obviousness about this as we can. We're gonna open it up, I'm gonna stir it in order to mix it good. I've got an artist brush set here, and we're gonna try to use less is more, take our time. Even if it takes me 10 or 15 minutes to do these 3 circles, we wanna make sure they're perfect. Not draw attention to it. Sometimes it's these little tricks that are the difference between a good job, a bad job, or a great job, right? Here we go. So, yep, these stains you can't mix. I'm sorry, you can't shake. You got to actually stir. And as long as I've got all these thud and crud on the bottom, it's not stirred enough. All right, so you just got to go until it's nice and consistent, or you're not going to get a result that's on the label. All right, let's get on with it. I'm just going to stick it in there, get rid of the excess. And we're just going to draw that edge out. So we're only applying the stain to the plastic wood the best of our ability. Okay. There we go. And with any stain, you're going to want to wipe off the excess. As soon as I'm done here, I'm going to do that. Oh, whoa, easy dog. Here we go. We'll do a quick blot on it. Okay. That was $9 of the stain just to get 3 dots. But in my opinion, it's worth it. Because when we're done, it'll be a lot less obvious. Hopefully. Hopefully. And we'll all be able to agree that was a good investment in time and energy. All right, guys, we're gonna just throw in a little wood glue, get this one closed up. Here. Try to keep this clean as possible. There we go. That is a nice little system. Try to prevent having too much of this glue squeeze out, right? At the same time, you want to have enough there to do the job. Yeah, I'm gonna have to crawl under here to screw this thing all together with a mending plate, so trying to be intentional and not create an environment where I start screwing and all starts dripping in my eyes. That would not be good. There, we'll throw a little bit on this side because that'll be a lot easier to identify where the end of that countertop is going to be. Beautiful. There we go. Let's lift her into place. It's kind of like tiling. We'll start shy and then we'll push and squeeze. And then right back to the wall so that we don't have a problem with the tile gap. And then just an added precaution so that when I get under there, as I'm crawling under, I don't bump it by accident and open up a gap. Throw a little bit of painter's tape, which I never use when I paint. Just when I do carpentry. All right, do a pre-drill. And a couple of these spots here. Oh, it's already stripped. So is my back. Let's go see how that looks from up top. Maybe it's good enough. Oh yeah, that's a great joint. Okay. Here we go. We're just going to be able to sand that in. That'll be lovely. So there's a little bit of a raised edge here. You know, the countertop's probably got a bit of a curve just like the other ones. And I'm seeing a shadow, so I don't like shadows, so I'm going to use a little bit of the plastic wood in there. Chances are by the time I'm done sanding these countertops back, the plastic wood will be all gone. But if there was enough product in there to get rid of that shadow, then it was worth using. Yeah, it's definitely just a raised edge. But hey, ounce of prevention here. There we go. Now the secret here is not to try to intentionally clean this out. The secret is to leave it rotating orbital along here until this wood gets planed down to the point where that sanding happens, okay? That is the secret. All right, that's looking really good. Okay, now what we're gonna do is just change from coarse to smooth, okay? And it's just gonna be rather quick. We're gonna take these pads interchangeable. We won't throw them out. We'll be able to use these multiple times throughout the rest of the room. Yeah, already that feels like the rest of the countertop, which is awesome. Now we're gonna switch over to 150. And we're gonna do a pass on the whole area, and then we'll go to the 220 and do another pass on the whole area. And then that should be done. Next step for the counters is actually to clean them because they're covered in dust. So I got a vacuum, I got two different attachments. Okay, now we are ready for our oil. All right, and we have three different application techniques available. Okay, one of them is a mini roller, sponge roller. It's a no lint roller. Most of these products nowadays have a leveling compound concept in them. All right, so you can expect that you don't have to sand in between coats. I'm still old school. I love giving a quick final sand with a steel wool 4-0 or 5-0 at the end of the day. And we're gonna see if that's necessary. We're just gonna put it right into my handy dandy bucket. Here we are. Because this product also needs a little bit of a stir, a little bit of a mix, okay? Osmo Top Oil, okay? It's high solids and it's made for furniture surfaces and butcher block countertops. Very important, it's a food grade safe kind of product. That'll ensure that even if you're not using, oh, that just feels amazing. Even if you're not using a chopping block, which was I recommend, or a cutting board of some sort, you know, you're not going to make yourself sick, right? That's important. Not every oil out there can be ingested, okay? Now, I'm going to use my brush to do a stir. All right. And in order to get comfortable with the product, I'm going to start in the far corner at the back. Here we go. I'm going to set it and drag it. Now, oil has an amazing ability to stretch. So see how it gets dry? We'll go back to the beginning and we'll pull the surface into the dry product. Okay? Did I grab some dirt? We don't want dirt. We'll do it again and again and again. Now everything is coated in the oil, even though I ran out halfway across. Okay? That's how you want to work. Nice and slow. Scrape off the excess or you're going to have drips and you're going to go through this product way too fast. Set your brush nice and light. You can even go backwards on the other side of the brush, but drag it and drag it and drag it until it's uniform. Okay? You'll never use too much oil that way. Okay, we aren't going to get overlap problems here. If we do a uniform coat, we won't have to go ahead and do any sanding in between these coats. But if we put too much product on here, you're going to feel it under your hand when it's dry. And you're going to be like, oh, you're going to have to sand those ridges back and clean it all up again and start all over. This is one of these situations where less is more. The product is relatively expensive compared to the size of the can. And of course you want to do this before you cut the sink in. Or you're going to be putting your brush contrary to the grain to get it done. Right? here is an awesome opportunity to use painter's tape. Yeah. Just because oil product is not going to come off the floor as easy after the fact. Okay, so we want to give ourselves a little bit of protection here. All right. And when you're working with oil on vertical surfaces, start from the bottom and drag it up. Okay. Yeah, that's almost invisible. That is much better. Okay. And this will get even more uniform on the second coat, so I'm actually really pleased with that. All things considered. Now that 1 can of Osmo oil is now done 18 linear feet of countertop. There's 36 square feet. I'm going to tell you right now, there's enough left in this can, probably for the second coat. So there's one final detail here to do. I can probably make this work. All right, well, it's been at least 24 hours and we're back to do the second coat on the countertop. Just to get an idea, we did all the sanding first, right? So this coat came out really nice. I mean, it is smooth, right? But at the same time, it's not smooth. You can feel some texture. And I was trying to figure out a way to show you that, and I came up with this idea. I've got my microfiber cloth here, right? And on a really smooth surface, it would just float along. But check this out. You lay it down, and it's grabbing the countertop. And you can hear that, okay? Now the solution here is not to grab the orbital sander. I have 220 sandpaper, which is really rather fine. But even at the lowest setting, the orbital sander is going to literally take the oil right off the surface. And that defeats the purpose of having a first coat. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to take whatever imperfections are in the odd piece of wood here, whatever microscopic dirt might be trapped in the oil, and we're going to smooth that out. So, here's what we're going to use. Steel wool, okay? But you look at the bottom of the bag, there's a lot of different ratings here. Okay, 3 is really coarse. And can you believe it or not, but in woodworking, this is really important. So I'm going to go with 00 for between coats, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to sand this area, and we're going to do that same test with the same cloth. And you'll be able to see the difference that it makes. Now that doesn't visually look like it's doing anything, right? Hardly making any noise. Okay. It's barely grabbing. I think it caught something in the corner. So the point is this. This is relatively smooth. But by taking time with the steel wool to go over the whole surface a couple of shots, we go from relatively smooth to actually having like an earth without mountains. Okay, that's really what we're trying to do here. Remember, the goal here is absolute perfection. You only get to do this once. So what I'm going to do is I'm using a really wrung out rag, okay? One of the things we don't want to let happen is we don't want to leave the steel there and get moisture mixed into it because it starts to rust, and it'll actually rust in between the layers. So we're going to start off with a damp rag. We're going to clean this off. Then I'm going to come back with a dry rag after, just to make sure that all the dust is gone. Okay, and now I'm just gonna buff it, make sure it's nice and dry. Remember, because it's covered in oil, the wood shouldn't be soaking up hardly any of that water. But just in case our sanding exposed a little bit something, we're gonna give this about 15 minutes before we put our second coat on. We'll do that same test now that we're all finished. Smooth as a baby's bum. Perfect every time. All right, so here we are. We're gonna use the second half of the same can for a second coat. We want to measure the whole length of our counter. I always start on a C-shaped countertop with the back wall first, okay? And we are 122 and a half. We'll write that down for good measure. 122 and a half, all right? Now our tile is actually 8 5/8 with a grout line. Now you can try to do that math if you want to. But what we do in the real world is we take a few pieces of tile and we just lay them out where we think it's going to go, okay? If you just start in a corner, you end up with ugly cuts. And there we have it. We have a piece about 1.5 inches long at the other corner. Now, that, for me, is an ugly cut, especially if I'm going to go half and half. So then what happens is you would have a bottom row there, and with a 50% offset we'd have this row, and then we would cut these two pieces to fit, and then it would duplicate again as we go up. And that's not terrible when you're doing 50% offset, because it does kind of hide those imperfections, because you're not going to have a series of tiny little cuts. Now, if that's the case, and we're going to go with real simple, okay, so simple is good, then I would start in this corner and go that way and leave those cuts over there. The reason for that is the traffic in and out of this kitchen is coming two directions. One direction is when guests come into the room, that's the first corner they're going to see. And the other one is when you come out of your bedroom. And you already know what you're doing, it's your house. So consider what's the most prevalent or predominant corner and make that one as sexy as possible. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we want to grab our laser level. This tool is incredibly important in this scenario because I'm going to drop a horizontal line, one end of the kitchen, and we're going to measure down from that line to the countertop to find out how level the back of the countertop is. All right, so first off, in that corner, we are at 56 millimeters. All right, and in this scenario, this being exact counts, okay? We're going to go take a look here. Here we're at 60 or 59, 59, 59, 59, 59. So it's just this back corner that is just a little bit raised. Okay. So what that means to me is, since my counter is actually going up in that corner, I have to start over here because the majority of my tile is all the same height. I can start full tile, I can build my stone, and as soon as I get to the height difference, I can actually cut the bottom of the tile, scribe it in to finish my line perfect into that corner, okay? Now we've got our basic layout, we know what the program's gonna be, we gotta prep our space, okay? Preparation is huge, especially when you have butcher block counters. You wanna protect your countertop from the thin set, all right? Here we go. Lay out our bag, and then we are going to tape them down, all right? And we're going to tape them down to about 3/8 of an inch from the wall. And confirm the tile will actually install, and then there's still a little bit of space for that thin set. If I put it too close, then when I'm done, I'm going to have tape underneath the entire tile line, okay? We should also talk about our plan for around the window. Let's have a look here, all right? Yeah, that's the problem. Now, you have two ways to deal with windows. One way is you can do a jamb and a casing and then tile up to the casing. A lot of people will leave their window casing in place, okay? What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna cut the tile to the height of my cement board, and then I'm gonna build a jamb out to cover the tile and then put the casing over top of the tile. It's a little bit more complicated, but we have a video on how to do that. We'll put the video link in the description. Point is by getting that finished look, putting the wood over the stone gives you that depth of field, okay, that says, hey, I'm a window casing. So I've got that. I've got my grinder here set up. There's a 4-inch grinder, ceramic continuous blade, and I'll do some of the little detail cuts right here so I can cut around electrical plates. But for everything else, I've got my wet saw set up outside. I have a 1/4 by 3/8 trowel for my cement board, and then I have a smaller trowel for on top because they're different thicknesses. You see how this goes through? This one actually is much more raised than the bottom. So I'm going to combat that raised situation by using a thicker amount of thin set on the bottom. And then I'm going to use my rubber grout float to pound it all together to get a finish at the same depth. Fingers crossed. Okay. Also, we're going to want to use these, the lash wedges. It's the floor leveling system. The bottom part of this wedge is very flat and very thin, and that's all we need to put underneath our tile, just to create that 1/16th, 1/32nd of a gap from countertop to tile so that it can move independently of the counter because it's attached to the wall, and the counters aren't. We're going to be using dry erase marker to mark my tile. So let's say I want to do an L shape. I can measure that on, okay? And then when I'm done, that just wipes right off. This is a glazed tile, okay? So this is a great tool. Other than that, I think I'm almost ready to go. I've got to go mix my thin set. I'm going to go outside to do that. Today I'm using Schluter All Set because I have two substrates. One is cement and one is vinyl, okay? So that's why we're using the Schluter All Set. No matter what you're tiling, if you use this one product, it applies for every scenario. Now, always, always, always add water first. And we're not going to make that big of a batch here. It is just a backsplash. It gives me about 1.5 hours of working time. Here's my product. Yes, it's a modified thin set, but it has been designed to also operate as a non-modified at the same time. So this is what I'm talking about, having that flexibility. And that's what I'm talking about, the dust, okay? Now we can see it. We're going to use this mixing paddle here. For drywall, it's got to be incredibly clean. Now this drill is very sensitive. I hate it, but I bought it because I'm cheap. Finger, you drag, and the hole closes up on itself, okay? 10 minutes from now, we're ready to start installing tile. All right, here we go. Now, you will notice that the end did chip off a little bit, just a touch. But when we're putting on tile, we're always overlapping corners. We're leaving a bit of a gap, and then we're finishing with silicone, all right? So don't have to go through the process of cutting from both sides. If it chips a little bit, it's not the end of the world, all right? All right, so we've had a few minutes for the cement to set up. Now I'm gonna do the drag test again. Here we go, and let's see if it holds its shape. Perfect. Now that is perfect thin set, everybody. I'm gonna start with a 1/4 by 3/8, and that is 1/4 by 3/8 deep, okay? Wow. All right. Now I'm gonna trowel it just a little flatter than usual, because I don't really need a 3/8 gap, right? So the way you do that is instead of holding it out so that all 3/8, instead of holding like this so you get the whole gap, you put an angle on it And now the top of that hole is actually closer to the wall. You can really customize it. And in that back corner, I'm going to take my shorter trowel, just because I'm going to find this to be simpler to use too, than to be constantly changing the depth. That'll make things too more inconsistent for me. And consistency is key, okay? Now, I'm going to take this trowel here, and I'm going to start at the top. Because I know that this thin set is good for about an hour in the pail, but it's also good for about 20 minutes on the wall. Let's start with a full tile in the corner first, and it's installed. It's that simple. Put our spacers underneath. Now we have unique spots here, these bumps, okay? So that when you put the tiles together, it creates a grout line. It happens here, it happens here, it happens here, and it happens here, all right? So if that's where the bumps are, that's where I want to put the spacer. If I put the spacer in between the bumps, then the bumps are still touching your countertop. Not the effect that we're going for. So, get these about an inch from each end. Okay, you saw the lift? Here, that's on the counter. Watch the lift. Lifted, okay? Perfect gap, all right? Now, I can install this gently and tight to the other tile, okay? All the way across the bottom. First I'm going to clean all the way across the bottom, okay? We're not pushing too hard here. This is the secret sauce, all right? Always cleaning as we go. If you stay clean, your job site stays clean, all right? Now, we're gonna go an inch from each end, do the lift. We already measured, we know that the counter is level here. All right. Maintaining that perfect gap for our grouting and our ceiling. Now the ends also have the bumps, so we can slide all this over. Okay, that's it. Whew. Deep breath. Now, we're gonna start with our half tile. There's my cut, it goes against the wall. And on the other side, we're gonna line it up where another half tile intersect, okay? And that'll be our design element. So here, no more yellow spacers, just goes right on top of each other. Okay, nice and gentle. The reason we're going to do gentle is once we build the wall, we're going to get the grout float to set the depth. Okay, nice and gentle. Just enough thin set so it doesn't fall off the wall, okay? And I've got finishing nails coming out of that wall. Unbelievable. The challenges you face working with this kind of construction. Now we put this in. Perfect. Okay, now we want to do this corner. All right, so we're going to put the tile here and make our mark. Remember, we're putting a window casing on. You don't have to be perfect. The window casing is going to come out about 2.5 inches. So anywhere in here is perfect for the cut. All right, so don't make your life miserable by getting so exact that you run into problems. All right. Remember, it's hard to measure the bump to the bump, so I'm going to give myself a little mercy. Okay, that'll be fine. And I'm taking this trim off to add 5/8 or 3/4 stock to build out for the window. So I'm going to go way back. I have nothing to prove to anybody here. And then to the middle, right? Here we go. Now, I could do that on a wet saw, but then my tile is soaking wet, and I don't want it wet. So I'm going to just use the grinder real quick, and we'll show you how to use that. Now, you can go outside to do this. It does make a little bit of dust, but if it's only a couple of cuts and you're in an active construction zone like I am, it's not a big deal. There we go. Now, that's dry, okay? So it'll bond really nice to this thin set. All right. Okay, there we go. Now, we can take our half pieces that we cut, put all those in, again, nice and gentle. Okay. Okay, so here are my tile off the wet saw. Have a rag, guys. Keep it dry. You can install wet tile on thin set. All right. Now here we go. We're gonna stick this one in now. There we go. And then the cut edge goes towards picture frame. And then all we do, because we've got the height for that cut, we'll touch that corner. Oh, look at that. It's going to be right at the edge of that. So this is just a straight cut. All right, I'm going to do that and be right back. There it is. Perfect. All right, one more stone there. You're going to realize if you're doing this kind of a project, sooner or later, that you're going to spend half your time going back and forth to the wet saw. Now you have an option. We did a video it was a while ago. It was a few years back. We did another subway tile and I had a little small scratch and snap tool, okay? If your tile doesn't have too much texture, it works out great. I didn't grab it for this one because this one actually has a bit of a bevel to it and I wasn't sure how that was going to end up playing out. So, and install. There we go. That part is done. Now we're going to start moving from here to all the way to the other side and cut around all of our plugs. I want you to realize something here. This stuff here is starting to get thick and dry, okay? And that is not a good thing. You know, tile work fails for a lot of different reasons. Some of the more common ones are temperature variation. You bring your tile in, it's cold, and you're putting it in a warm house. You get instant condensation on smooth surfaces, such as the back of tile. That little film of water keeps the thin set from bonding to the tile. So then after, when it's dry, your tile isn't engaged. Okay, the second one is your thin set has been sitting for too long, and the chemical reaction of setting that up, at a microscopic level, the surface of that thin set is already dry. Now, depending on how much you're going to collapse your ridges, will determine whether or not that's going to be a problem or not. But in most cases, yeah, it's a problem. Okay, we're going to use a lot more thin set here. We really need to build that out. There we go. Okay, so room temperature tile. Okay, make sure that your tile edge is kept wet. All right, and all things should go well with you. Now, I have this last cut one here. I have too much thin set in here, so we're going to clean this out. All right, it'll just make a mess. Here we go. There we go. That is going to work out great. Okay. Here we go. Let's check out our plug. Okay, we're going to just trace off above it and on each side, so we know where our tile needs to be. Okay, so you can see that generally speaking, we have a solid 1/8 of an inch. So if we cut our tile tight to this, the plug will cover. All right, and then we're going to cut our tile just off the edge of the box as well. So any of these little gaps, the plates will cover. All right. Now, put this one on. Now here comes the trick. Time for the next little stunt here. I got to get this piece in the same position as this piece, but up here. So I have to cut the plug out and cut it the right length. And the only way to do that is you need a line to reference from. So we're going to take our laser level and drop it right in that gap. Okay, that'll translate my line. Piece of cake, right? Now I can draw exactly what I need. There we go. And there's my end cut. Okay, and here is my height. Get nice and low there. There we go. Just because we measure right doesn't mean we go without the laser. Let's put that back. Okay, and I put thin set on the back of the tile over here. And we're going to just line that up till we are incredibly happy. So two things that are happening here. One is we're lining up the bumps and those transitions as well. Now there is none here, so I'm going to add a shim, try to keep that level. Okay, we got a lot of cuts here. Once we get past this plug though, it'll move relatively quick. Okay, here we go. Well, that ought to work. All right. Where are we here? Once again, we're going to set this up. Get our lines, get our lines straight. Here we go. Okay. There we go. Beautiful. Nice. And boom. Okay. Bam. Okay, that wall is done. All right, so we're going to start here and work our way to the corner, and whatever happens down there happens. I'm not saying we're ignorant to it. Like if I get down there and I have a 1/4 inch, I'm going to measure when I get close. I can always widen up some of my grout spacings to move the tile and eliminate that gap. There is a cheat. But first we got to get past the stove area, and then we will worry about how that finishes off down there. So right now we have to do a little thinking ahead. We're going to have an issue right here on this wall. So I have to, oh, here, I'll measure this way. Measure and install some structural supports. Now I'm cutting it 1/4 inch shy on purpose just to make my life easy. I don't want to have to run out and do this again, but I'm going to cut this and screw it to the wall so I can transfer the load of that tile, because the thin set that I'm using, it's not a high quality adhesive. A high quality adhesive will actually hold the tile in place. So you don't need to do this. But if you're using thin set, you've got to put some structural weight relief there, okay? It's got to hold it in place until such time as it's dry. That takes about half an hour to 45 minutes, all right? So let me cut that and get right back. Okay, so I know I've got a piece of wood here. Yeah, that works. I got a piece of wood over here. All right, here's how we set this level. First thing to do is check your trim. Make sure it's flat. It is. Okay? No good to me, right? So now I'm squeezing them together, and I'm using this thumb and pushing down on both sides. And that'll be where we set this screw. exactly flush with the countertops. All right, now we've got this package. These are our ends. Because we're starting on the end, I'm gonna add it now instead of later, okay? That happens. This wall is very strange because I'm in the middle of a renovation and we did the waterfall, very sexy. We're gonna be actually capping this with some wood that's gonna be extending a little bit and then a little return trim, little something to close that gap, okay? So the truth is I'm gonna have something over here to close that gap, all right? All the way up. So this goes right to the end of that, okay? So that's gonna be my finish. So my trim will finish here, my tile will finish here, okay? Just dropped my drill, I caught it, lost another one. We're gonna set this line right off the edge of the wood, okay? And we're gonna get started. Now we're gonna take our thin set and expertly apply just a little bit to the back of this. Okay. Got it. That I'm happy with. So here we go. Now we're going to investigate our space in case we need to make any last minute changes to the dimension. We're just shy of 89 inches, okay? Now we take our template, which is our original wall, that we started with a full tile, and we're going to go check, see what happens at 89 inches. 89 inches, I have 3 inches of tile left. So that means I'll have a 3-inch tile over here, right? And then like a 5-inch tile over here. So this corner will look very much like this corner. I'll have a 3-inch and then a longer one. So what we can do in order to make that look more uniform, like it was wrapped around the corner, is we'll start with the half tile. So I'm going to have a 2/3 tile to finish. And then that small one will line up with this big one. Does that make any sense? Because I started with a full, so if I mirror that starting with a full, I come back here and I only have 3-inch tile. And that will look really stupid. It'll look like butterfly wings. Ugly. So we'll start with the half tile here, end up making it look like we intentionally wrapped and went this way. But if we do that, I'm gonna have weird slivers down here and it's not gonna look uniform. So we will start on the outside edge. Let's just go throw this all on now. If I could just give you one piece of advice about doing tile, it's about take your time. This is all about perfection, not about performance. Doing a DIY project is all about eliminating the stress of your life from hiring a contractor. So not forcing yourself to work fast, but force yourself to work smart. Remember, a project like this is supposed to look like the kitchen was installed over top of the stone, not look like the stone was installed last. So precision is key. Finishing everything off with a thin grout line and a little bit of silicone, make it all look flawless. You can't achieve that look if you're in a rush. In this particular project, we ran into issues because there was one stud that was bowed into the room right in the middle of the stove, and it caused a little bit of lippage. Now we're going to move into grouting, and I'm going to show you a few tricks that you can use to hide those mistakes so that they are pure flawless to all of your friends and family. Today, I'm using Poly Blend Plus non-sanding grout. Never used it before. This is from the custom building products. and they're exclusively at Home Depot. Met them at a trade show, went through the product line. Good guys, seem to know what they're talking about. We're gonna try it. I'm not familiar with it, but since they're selling it at your store that most of you are shopping at, we're gonna give it a college try and get some experience. And no, stop asking me to use the pre-mixed grout. I'll never use that stuff. It won't happen. Let's just get that off the plate. I'm a big fan of mixing my own grout for a lot of different reasons. But here we go. Now see this? All I did was wet that. So just to be clear, here's my knife, it's on an angle, okay? Just going like this, the tip of that knife is underneath the tile. And when we're done the grouting process, we're gonna add silicone with a bevel, all right? So we're actually gonna be coming in front of the tile with the silicone, just really clean. So anything that's in front of that, if I go down, like I'm making contact here with it, right? There's a risk some of this will show. So all I did was get it wet. I take it on the knife on the side, and I can go like this. It comes off without any effort. Because thin set, when it's modified in this format, takes a good couple of weeks to actually finish the curing process. Watch this. Squeeze your sponge in there. Now that's all cleaned out. Next thing you gotta do, take your damp sponge, just go all around your wall. Okay, making sure that the surface of the tile is clean of any thin set, and anything that might be in the gaps or cracks gets wet. All right, and if you wipe the whole kitchen all the way down, come back and wipe it again with the like wrung out sponge. After 2 or 3 passes, you're guaranteed to get all of that thin set out of the way, okay? One of the reasons why you want a really wrung out sponge is right here, okay? If you use a wet sponge, water will hit this, travel around, connect the screws, and it'll electrocute that water. And then you'll touch it and you'll get, yeah, like that. Not good if you're getting older or have a heart condition, all right? All right, so I'm having one of those days. I just lifted out the bag to take a look at it, and it's got a tear in the bottom, so it started making a hell of a mess. I was reading the directions, and it says 1.4 liters for every 10 pounds in a 10-pound box. That's great. This is 8 liters of water, so I want to go to about 6.5 liters. Right, so we're going to pour out until I get to where I want to be, because that might be easier than pouring all this down. Yeah, that's probably pretty good. A little bit more than 6.5. And then the sand's in the hourglass bag here. Holy cow. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna try to do this controlled because it can come out like one big lump and it just makes a mess everywhere, okay? Now they're telling you in the directions, get a stick and stir this for 3 minutes. Yeah, we all know what that looks like. A visit to the hospital for tendinitis. I don't know what these companies are thinking, showing us to use a stir stick. Now I get it, there are some issues with some grouts, okay? Especially browns, where there's a red dye in there and it separates if you mix it, okay? And then you can grout something and get different shades of brown all over your floors and walls. So be aware of that. But for this situation here, we're gonna go on number 1 speed, okay? On drill, and we're just gonna drill it. On low, right down here on the floor. Well, there's our consistency. It's a thick, thick paste, okay? Like really thick. Not whipped cream at all. This is thick. And that drill will mix that. Try to do that by hand, you'll break your arm. So forget about it, all right? I'm gonna throw this in my water bucket. Here we go. I'm gonna put it on 3. And just wash it off for the next time. One secret about tiling is always clean every tool as you go. and then you'll never have to throw them out. So the directions on that box say, and it's like most things, you mix it and then you let it set up. Okay, so we got about 5 minutes. Just checking, because I wiped all my counters down. There's my tape over there. And now, I'm gonna just set myself up with a perimeter of protection. Okay, I know it's unsanded, so in theory, it wouldn't scratch the countertop, but that's only in theory. So this isn't huge. This is just a little something. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going within about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. So I've got my garbage pail up here. It's my counter tarp and my pail, and we're gonna get started. Okay, and it kind of should just hang and sag a little bit like that. All right, beautiful. And it shouldn't be lumpy. So we're putting it on in a 45-degree angle, and it's not to the tile, it's the float on the wall. I can go straight in on a 45. The reason we go like this on a 45 is because we don't want the float lining up with any of the lines. Okay? Because then you don't dig the grout out. All you do is press it in. Okay? So, if you want to push it up as you go, do that. Right? Use the edges to push the grout and fill these spaces in. Okay. So when we apply, we're on a 45. When we're cleaning, we're more of a 90. You really want to put some pressure on here, clean it all off, get the excess out of the way. And in a house like this, built out of 2x3s, the wall is not going to be flat. So come from more than one direction. Make sure you get as much of the grout off as you can, because all that does is create work when you're washing. Okay, when you're washing, the more you have to remove, the faster your water gets dirty. The more times you've got to stop what you're doing and get another clean pail of water. Or it makes it really difficult at the other end, okay, to try to buff the tile because you've got so much grout left on there. All right, here we go. We'll get another little batch of new stuff over here. Now, I'm gonna lean into the corner, work my way out this time, loading up near the top where my float is square. Okay, and then I'm pushing it in to that gap all across the top of the cabinets. All right. Same thing on the bottom. You can already see down here where we cleaned the tape out. Right, the grout is filling in that gap. It looks really nice and clean. Making real sure around your plugs you get that gap right up to the edge. Right, like if I got a spot right there like 1/8 of an inch or something that's not done, what'll happen is when the cover plate goes on, it'll be obvious. So always make sure you start right there. Leave a little bit extra right on the edge if you have to. No big deal. That's done. We're going to leave it in the pail. I'm going to toss a little bit of water in it so that it stays cool and it doesn't heat up. And it lasts a little longer. So I've got the ability to grab a little bit of thumb here. In case we get some pinholes, we can use it in a minute. Okay, so first thing is first, you got to wash the tools. All right, so we go back to the beginning. And we're cleaning that edge, right? And we're trying not to use too much pressure. All right, so generally they want you to wait about 30 minutes before you polish, okay? And that's fine. What I'm doing is just a quick wash, okay? Getting the excess off. This is really light sponge work. Just cleaning up my workspace, okay? Now, I'm not really trying to polish the stone as much as I would otherwise. Just making sure I got my excess grout out of the way. It's a lot easier at 30 minutes if you've sponged off the extra stuff just nice and lightly. All right. Okay. when you wash it, you wring it, get it nice and dry. This is not the time to be up here with a wet sponge. We're just buffing, taking off extra material, doing a pre-buff really is what it is, to identify if we can make nice lines. Here we go. And in a few minutes, I'll come back around the other side. We'll start all over again. So the first thing you got to take a look at is lippage. Lippage is going to happen, especially on walls where you've got wood construction, because the wood is not flat. So all your walls are not flat. So you're going to have lippage. And the industry has certain allowable amounts of lippage, okay? The smaller the tile, the more it hides the lippage, okay? And also, the more linear you stack your tile, the more it hides your lippage. So as soon as you start going offset, you invite that environment. Because as the wall moves in and out, okay, your tiles are meeting in different locations. And so they can be moving and installing like this. So we have a little lippage right here. All right, and check this out. I can see the grout covering the tile on the corner. The secret here to get rid of the lippage is to take your sponge and go in the direction where that corner should be exposed. And you wipe that out until the corner of the tile is exposed. Okay? Now there's a slight shadow, but there's slight shadows everywhere. Leaving that grout there really enhances the obviousness of that lippage. All right? That's one thing you want to look at. Number two, let's see if we can find an example of this. All right, right here. See those lines in the grout? Looks like somebody used a really fine comb, okay? That's the effect of the sea sponge going up and down. So the way we deal with that is we go sideways. And we buff that soft. Now there's no lines, okay? So you'll notice that even using a sea sponge, because it's got texture, will leave lines in the grout. So gentle is the key. So if you're always going against the line to polish, or in circles, very effective. Now what polishing does is it gets rid of all the little bumps and ridges. Here's another little spot where there's lippage. This obviously, there's a stud here that's proud. So we're gonna go on like that on the corner. We're gonna get rid of it, okay? Go across that joint and soften it up. And now we've got a spot here. You can see this thin gray line. This is actually thin set stuck on the tile. No matter how hard you try to clean, you're going to get this happening. So what I do is I just take my fingernail and I rub it off and I polish in that grout line again. Okay? Looking for imperfections, looking for lippage. If everything looks fine, just a nice buff. Because the buffing, that circular motion, is what gets rid of all your lines and your pinholes. And there's also a textured look to a grout line that hasn't been polished. It looks very rough, like the skin on your heel of your foot, okay? It's just rough looking. And so if you have, try to find something in the light that's even a better example. So then with a dry kind of damp sponge, gentle pressure, right? Like I'm just barely touching the wall. Circular motion. Oh, didn't get it. A little more pressure. Okay, go in a couple of different directions, get rid of the pinholes. Now it's nice and soft, all right? That's all we're doing. Remember, when we're working with light, every time a surface is in a different direction, it catches the light different and it's a different color and it will stand out. It'll look like a shadow, okay? Or a really bright spot. So try to use less is more. Make sure that you're exposing your corners without digging the grout out, okay? And then when you get that happy place, stop. That's just the best advice I got. When you're happy with it, stop. Stop fussing with it. You can always come back later. You've got half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe even an hour. You can get clean water or a clean sponge. You can take a microfiber rag. You can dry everything off first, have another look, okay, inspect again. If you need to, you can take a damp rag and you can polish in one space and resurface it, all right? And if it's absolutely necessary, grab your pail with the water, with your old grout, okay? Because there's water sitting in the bottom, I still have loose grout that I can mold with a little bit of moisture. And with my thumbs, you can see how smooth that gets, right? I can still apply some of this, give it 10 minutes to dry out, and then sponge it in and polish it in if I have to. So don't be in a panic. That's why I recommend this type of product, because it dries slow in the pail as well. So you've got time. If you dig too much out, you can go get some, put it back on there, leave it messy so it's easy to identify, work your way around the room, come back to something messy. What the hell, all right? Oh, let's just say I did that. Oh, now that's really clean, but now it has a really dark line. Okay, so what I want to do is go, that has a dark line, it's screaming at me. Yeah, so this would be over cleaned, all right? So you take a little bit of your paste, you throw it on here, and you just rub it in, okay? Now I'm just using my fingers instead of a grout sponge. So unfortunately, it wants to just kind of like completely wipe away. There we go. Now we got it left in the grout line. That's a repair, okay? It's messy, but that's okay. The goal here is to make sure that when we're finished, it looks good, right? Ugly in the middle is fine. Okay, now this has only been a minute. I might have to fix this after I try this, but we're just gonna go, this corner is sitting proud. So what I first want to do is walk away from it, okay? And then I'm gonna polish back to it and leave as much of that material on there as I can. That is a much better look. Cheers. All right, here we go. Now you see that that edge isn't perfect. That's okay. Take your sponge, gentle pressure, one wipe. There we go. Now that edge is perfect. Now it still needs to get that clear silicone, but that is a really sexy edge. If you put a thin bead of clear silicone there, not translucent, that crap goes yellow. Clear silicone, it'll look like wet countertop all day long right on that joint. It'll never break off, and you'll be super happy. Okay. Remember, this is just protection against my grout sponge. It's not actually an edge of anything. We're done with all that. Now, the next thing for me to do is obviously give the whole counter a wipe. Make sure my whole edge is nice and clean and I don't have any stray lines of grout, okay? I really want that to look cut, like a paintbrush cut. In order to get that look, I'm gonna have to wipe it with a clean sponge. There we go, all right? There we go, now that's what sexy's all about right there. Oh yeah. Now, every time I'm wiping with a sponge right now, I'm leaving a bit of a haze, okay? Because the water's dirty. So what we're gonna do is get a new pail of water, clean out my sponge, throw a little bit of dish detergent in there, just a drip, okay? So that we can actually remove the grout surfaces from all the wood cabinets and the countertops and get this nice and clean. And that's it. So let's just introduce this beast. I got myself a great big single sink. All right. It comes with this protective film on it, which for me right now is in the way. There we are. Now, the reason we did all that is because I need to trace this out. Hey. We're gonna set it in place upside down. I have to measure not just this wood, but there's a piece of trim in behind it. All right. The only way to do this properly is literally put this on the countertop and then slide forward until I hit something. And then I can measure this way. I am 1.5 inches will clear, plus my overhang of 1 1/8 inches. 2 5/8 will clear. So we're gonna go 2 3/4, just to be safe. This is the lip, it sits on top of the counter. This track is where your clamps go. So we're gonna measure from here to 2 3/4. All right, right to the edge. That's 2 3/4. This is pretty darned exact science. Okay, and now we're gonna see if I got any room in the back. So my issue here is that I need to cut a line on this side of that track, right over here. So I literally have to cut a hole between somewhere around 3/4 of an inch. In a perfect world, I want to have it right here. That's the center. We have to center the sink. There's my center line on my sink. Okay. We're going to tape this off. Okay. First thing I do is I actually trace the outside and then we measure off. Make sure that is perfect. Now we're going to trace this onto the tape. Give or take, that isn't really going to matter too much because we're actually going to cut the back first and then set the sink in and double check all of our measurements. So there's my line. All right. Now, if everything I do, I got to consider this is the finished countertop. I don't want to cut exactly what I just marked. I don't want to cut here because this has to be recessed. I want to cut here. This line is where I want to cut. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure off where I want to cut. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I literally want to cut 1/4 inside that line. I'm going to end up with a cut line right here because of that saw. So right now my tracing is a full 1/2 inch off. Okay, I'm just squaring off. All right, so I've got myself on my cut line and over here, so I'm square. So we're just going to trace this out now where the saw blade actually goes. Okay, and we're going to push this back. That little bit of an edge here. That's all I got to play with. It's 1/4 inch. So there's my shape. This side is really short. This side has got a little bit more mercy, so let's take advantage of its hospitality. All right. Hey, let's get this out of here now. How am I going to cut that round? Now this is going to create a little extra work for me, but let's see if we can line up the radius of that turn. Yeah, that does a really nice job. Okay, so if I drill out all 4 corners first, then I'm in really good shape. Then I'm not going to have a problem because I can get my drill in here, and then I can just straight cut the rest. Problem solved. Here we go. And I'm liking that. All right, let's pick up some speed now. Now, you're going to notice, because we're dealing with laminated wood, there's a lot of glues involved in this. Now, look what happens to your bit. This is all glue. An adhesive buildup. Builds up on the teeth, gums up, okay? And then you can't get any more grab. So every little bit that you drill, take it out and clean the teeth in this situation. Here we are. All right. That was painless. Let's go see how we did with that hole. Very nice. Not too much burning at all. That's really good core. All right, that's the process. We do it 3 more times. Core number 4. There we go. So we're just going to set up our saw now, and of course this is a no battery zone, all right? And we're going to set the core right on the table. Get to the deepest spot. Make sure that your blade is going to be just a 1/16 longer than the material, okay? This will be for the first run. Now, because of the nature of the saw, the blade is round, when it gets over here, it's going to be cutting like this, and it won't finish the cut all the way through. So you're going to see, I'm going to set the blade here, and I'm going to cut by moving the saw backwards for you. All right, you'll be able to see what happens to this hole I'm going to keep an eye on the blade so that it doesn't make contact on this side. And I'm going to try to cut all the way back through without making contact over here. Now, here we go. Okay, there's our line. Okay, so you can see the cut is not all the way through here. So I've got to take my orbital and finish that cut there. And on the other end, I'm actually shy. This shouldn't be any problem. Always let the jigsaw finish moving before you lift it in case it catches something. You can put a hole in your countertop. That always sucks. Yeah. My orbital saw, my God. I meant my oscillating tool. Okay, beautiful. That is done and done. Here's my concern. The glaze on the tile might actually get damaged running the saw blade along it. All right. So we're gonna add a layer of protection here. And glaze is great for washing, but it is not durable when you rub metal up against it. The only thing we don't have here is protection to keep the countertop from collapsing. Okay? This is an issue. So, we're going to take our couple of 2-inch screws, attach it to our countertop. There. There we go. Okay. Now we can finish the cut. Let's get the dust off this first. All right. Here we go. We did a little bit of a job on that, eh? Now it's time to find out if the sink fits. Oh, talk about committed, eh? You got the countertop, you got the tile done in it, all the finishing work, and now we're gonna find out if the sink fits. That's fun. First thing I gotta do though, is I've gotta cut all the existing drain out of the way because it was set up for a double sink. I am gonna rerun that plumbing later. Today I'm just gonna get in here and cut this off. Nice and square, just above the clean out, and get my hand straight across. Okay, I'm gonna hold the bottom and keep it still. I'm using a metal blade. All right, so this is just a whole series of compression fittings. I'm just gonna throw this out. We'll start from scratch. And again, I'm gonna have to add an air vent because there's no venting in these buildings. But I'm gonna try to bring my air vent up as close to the top as possible, so that even when the sink is full of water, there's fresh air pouring in behind it, in case it gets backed up, right? Ugh. Now we find out if this fits. Okay. Whew. Look how perfectly, right on those black lines, just a little bit of wiggle room. That is absolutely amazing. So I've got clear and I've got white. I'm gonna have to use white along the back. I don't have a choice. All right, so here we go. Now, here's the dough. The reason we went in the order of finishing with our wax and oil first is because we do have to silicone the counters in. Back in the old days, we use this, plumber's putty, okay? Or the sink would come with a gasket. And it was like a peel and stick almost, right? Now I don't know why they're making everything so bloody exact. Like it really isn't necessary. They could make this overhang just a little bit more, but this bar here actually acts like a structural support. So it's actually really strong. It doesn't have much deflection at all in it. So when you get your screws in there, it generally keeps tight. And they mentioned they want 3 across the front, 2 on each side, and 3 across the back. 3, 6, 10, and the package only comes with 6, of course, so I'm gonna have to go back to the store and buy a second package. Whatever. But here's my problem. So you take your plumber's putty, and you act like a kid again, okay? And you roll it out. And you make your own gasket. Too thick here. All right, and you can take your gasket, and you can set it right there. So what we're trying to do is make a waterproof seal for this sink, right? Because you don't want water getting in underneath, especially if you have Formica. Because Formica, man, when it gets wet, look out. But even with butcher block, and I'll tell you why, because it's layers of wood, right? And it's got adhesives. And when adhesive gets wet, it loses its bond. Now you make this gasket, and you make it so that you have to under compression with the screw, and you get it in place. And the reason I like this more, even though it's a lot more work, is because when you put silicone on here and you put your sink in, you're in the wrong spot. And then you gotta wiggle it around, right? Well, now you're pushing the silicone everywhere. Well, do you really even have a bond anymore by the time you get in the final resting place? And that's why they say, put the silicone, put it in, and then come back with another bead of silicone. I'm like, it looks like crap. There's nothing worse than a drop-in sink that has silicone everywhere. So, you do the finish in case you gotta rely on some silicone, because if you do the silicone on the wood before it's finished, it'll stain. And then you'll have a silicone line on your wood. And that'll drive you nuts too. Okay, so we run this thin enough that we can put it in without having to tighten the screws and squeeze it all out. Okay. Hoorah! I'm going to install the basket strainer first because I don't want to do that afterwards, and I'd rather do it while I'm standing up versus underneath the sink. And this piece here I'm going to leave attached because I'm probably going to need that for the connection later. Okay, so we got the ring, we got our cardboard, and we got our rubber gasket, right? So again, we need a gasket. Yeah, let's do it this way. Across the corner. We got good contact. Yep, we're gonna be good here. All right. Okay. Now we do need the foam, and we do need the cardboard, and then we put on the ring. And we go over backwards until you feel it sit. There it is. Then you go forward. Now the reason the cardboard is there, it's actually there because the metal on the rubber, it'll bind, and it'll go like this. It'll make a little squeezy loop like that under pressure because their threads are on an angle, and this is flat. So it ends up putting an uneven amount of pressure on the gasket. The cardboard is so that it can slide without binding when you start to build up pressure. Okay, we just go like this, and then we check the position on the inside. Here, let me just show you this. All right. Okay. Be conscious of this issue. This is going to slide around. You want to have it right in the middle, not all to one side, because it'll look odd. All right, and then you just keep on giving this a crank. Okay, watch the position while you're turning it. Oh yeah, baby. I like to crank this until I see putty come out from all the way around. But you don't always get that exact equal share. There we go. Oh yeah, that looks real good. Okay, now, oh, that looks like crap. You can see the putty. Okay, don't use a knife, but you can use a screwdriver here. All right. Okay, guys. Now, almost ready. Remember what I said. We got a gasket across the back. We got our gasket over here now, right? Now we're gonna have to do the silicone work. Okay. Well, we're good. So I've got tape across the front where my 1-inch overhang is. Okay. I'm gonna take my sink now and set it up right here, because before we add the silicone to the front, we got to install our faucet. And this is going to be key. I want to do all of this difficult work while we're standing up, because if we can do it here and set it all in, then we don't have to lay underneath the sink with 2 tools and messing around, right? So here's all of our parts that we need for this installation. This is quick and simple. Okay, so we got to feed this from the top down the pipe, because the other end isn't big enough. There we go. Okay, and we are going to leave it. I'm going to leave this part of the assembly until after I've got it installed. That's already enough things to get through that hole at one time. And I don't want to risk damaging this while I'm blind. If this gets nicked, then this automatic shut off, the automatic connection may not work. Like one little scratch, right? So we'll do that later. We're going to install this. We're going to need this little hat channel. It'll go this way. That will fit in there like that. And that'll be the gasket seal between this and the sink. So obviously, if you're right-handed, you want this on the right. Most people put this on the right. Generally speaking, the brand name is labeled to be facing you, okay? They like to brand everything in the room. This will swivel, so it doesn't really matter, but this assembly here is important. So we want to have this Moen's sign facing forward with the handle parallel to the sink, right? So we install these lines, and then this line, and then this, making sure that the hat gasket is sitting in the right position, making sure that our handle is in a good spot. We only get to do this assembly once. Okay? Now you'll see this fancy washer here. The idea here is this will go over top of that, and then all these other lines will be in a comfortable position. Okay? There we are. Okay. Then you have this nut, goes on here, go backwards until it catches. And then we spin for 4 hours. Why we do that? All right, now we're at the point where we got to be paying attention. If I'm pushed to one side, there's actually a gap that appears. So you want to have the hoses right up against the countertop. And then this tool is then used to give you the torque. So we want to have this perfect position. Okay, look off the side. There we go. And if you need extra power, I'm going to just hold this assembly here and turn my nut and create that compression. Okay. This is a great way to 10x your strength. So ladies, if you're doing this at home and you don't feel like you're good with a wrench, trust me, this is something that you can do. Okay, this will start to twist. This will sit still, this will start to twist. Because it's made of plastic, that's how you know it's tight enough. Done. All right, and now we can put on the second one. There we go. Okay, now we can feed our hose. All right, through the neck. Should be just a quick connect here. Take the cap off. So this is a cover. It's designed to protect the plastic and the rubber washer here from getting damaged or scratched or nicked while you're doing the install. And it's just there, it's got a little round head, makes it a lot easier to feed it through. Now that's on the other side, the first thing you want to do is do the quick connect. Okay, so now the hot and the cold lines, which are marked, that's in an odd spot, because after you put it in, you have to crawl underneath to take a look up to find it, right? If it was down here by the connection, it'd make a lot more sense, but you got electrical tape, you can mark the hot. If you don't, grab the cold water line and mark it with your blue masking tape, okay? Now you'll know when you go to make your connections. You don't have to go crazy. All right? That is good enough for me and where I live. Good, that doesn't come out. Okay. I think we're ready to go. Here's one other thing. We should probably put this on while we're thinking about it. In the bottom of the sink, you want this weight to split the difference. I'm sure that that yellow tape there is for a reason. There we go, okay? So when it's upside down, this is what pulls the faucet tight, all right? For us, we're good like that. We're good, we're good, we're good. Everything is tight, everything's secure. We'll attach the top of the faucet in a minute. Now we're ready to add the clear silicone across the front of this sink. Let's switch our product line up. Same thing. You want to cut it on an angle. Okay. We'll penetrate the seal. We'll squeeze a little bit out, make sure that we're good. And this will be here on purpose. Make sure clear, huh? I hope it dries clearer than it looks right now. All right, here we go. We're going to throw a nice healthy bead on here because we want to make sure that we get contact. Double check. When we're painting, less is more. When you're siliconing, more is more, okay? We're going to be fine. We've got our tape line. We can wipe up and clean up as we go. Now we pop this bad boy in. Okay. That was an awful lot of work just to get to this one moment. Okay. So our gases are all going to be engaged. We want to make sure that we get the right location. Not on the tape. And our center line, just a hair off. That's just really lousy, but hey. Okay. Victory. Now, what I was talking about earlier is putting the weight in the sink to make sure that I get good bond here. Here we go. Here's 50 pounds. There's another 40 pounds to take. All right. So in the pail, I have a soapy water solution. All right. I'm using this just to wipe off the excess silicone. I'm going to toss this rag when I'm done. I'm using a rag just in case it's sharp. Okay. All right, there we go. Now, as far as this is concerned, I'm going to go underneath there and I'm going to add all of these clips. So I'm going to do one for the camera. I'll go underneath there and reach up and tighten this one, and you'll see the pressure. And as I'm tightening, hopefully we'll see more of this gasket squeezing out. And that'll confirm that we've got a nice tight seal here in the corner. Now the trick with this, of course, is get the tooth where you need to have it, and then get that slotted screwdriver on the end of that screw the way you want it. Had to buy a sink about as big as I could bloody fit in the cabinet. Now I'm paying the price, eh? Okay, I've got it. We're gonna put some pressure on it now, okay? Hopefully we get some really good compression. Okay, here we go. All right, let's take a look at how that looks to the countertop. There we go. That's a perfect seal. Now I've got one right here in this corner. I'm going to the hardware store. I'm buying an extension for my drill and a slot head screwdriver and a magnet bit, and I'm going to get down there and connect the rest of those. I'm also going to buy a pair of long nose pliers. This is a really deep well, and I've really pinched myself in a few spots. Well, I'm going to let this dry overnight underneath the weight before I go and connect the rest of these, because it is a little bit of fussing around and I don't want to have things moving while this is set up and drying. Okay,